Hello everyone. We hope you're doing well. We're doing great, and we truly appreciate your ongoing support. We'd like to briefly address some comments regarding our audiobook series. Rest assured, progress is ongoing. That said, your feedback is vital. If there's a novel you particularly enjoy and want to hear more of, please let us know in the comments. Each chapter requires a financial investment, so we can only continue series that receive strong audience interest. Although we retain core names and plot lines, we make significant editorial changes to enhance clarity, pacing, and immersion. These are not simple recitations. We work hard to deliver a polished, thoughtful listening experience. Without sufficient feedback or engagement, we may need to discontinue a series. So if you're enjoying something, don't stay silent. Your input truly matters. Note, our default audio speed is 3x. If that's too fast, let us know. We're happy to adjust it. Interested in early access to unreleased audiobooks? Visit our Patreon. You'll get to experience new content before it reaches YouTube. Just to clarify, I'm a fan like you. I've purchased these novels and adapted them with care, while respecting all rights and guidelines. For updates, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, X. YouTube update: recently, YouTube flagged some of our content for including mature themes, realistic violence, and darker story elements. As a result, we've decided to stop uploading anything that violates YouTube's guidelines. If you'd like access to the full, uncut versions including the more intense or mature content, you can find them on our Patreon page, where we upload everything first. Available now on Patreon: Shattered Innocence transmigrated into a novel as an extra. Transmigrating over 10,000 years late, I was forced to become a mighty presence. I, the celestial dragon, rule the heavens through the double gate, reigning supreme in countless worlds with beast taming, Tower of God sequence strength, cultivation when you take things to the extreme. Naruto is an Uchiha with cyst. WTF, the centuries-old ancestor in our family take concubine again. Plus 18, Ichi, reincarnated in Bleach as a wizard. Thanks for listening and happy listening. Chapter 1: Deep Sea Affinity. You brats, if you don't want to die, get up, kill him, show some guts. Do it, kill the Black Bull. Only then can you become a member of our Black Whale group. That's it, let's have some suspense. Chenchi opened his eyes, surrounded by the sounds of curses and cheers. It hurts. Where is this? What's going on? Scanning the surroundings, it wasn't his familiar bedroom but a totally strange world, on a giant ship. Dark clouds gathered, the sea wind howled incessantly, and 50 people dressed as pirates surrounded him like beasts observing a coliseum fight. What on earth is going on? Could it be that he was targeted by a kidnapping gang? But why would they sail out to sea? And based on his financial situation, how could he have attracted the attention of an international kidnapping group? It couldn't be just because of his looks, could it? Am I going to be sold to some weird rich lady island next? What happened? Chenchi pressed his head with his hands, trying hard to recall. His memory was very clear. Before coming to this place, he was clearly in his bedroom, about to start a new game. Wait, the game. Chenchi looked at his dust-covered hand, and a line of illusory blue text slowly appeared. A weak slave who has just awakened spiritually and is slightly deformed. At that moment, a sharp pain surged in his head, and a flood of complex information rushed in. Steampunk world, flesh implants, black giant whale, high sky crack, 13 witches, 13 nature forms, new sun world, foreign languages. Chenchi had to grit his teeth and endure the knife-like pain. Only after more than 10 seconds did he recover from the overwhelming information. I transmigrated into the game world of New Sun. New Sun was a large multiplayer role-playing exploration game with a steampunk style, employing the latest high technology. It had unfathomable randomness and an unimaginably vast map. Even during its beta test, it was a hit on global streaming platforms. The game's background was a steampunk apocalypse. The world had not yet entered the age of electricity before cracks with destructive properties emerged all over the world. The land was polluted, kingdoms fell, the moon left, and the sun disappeared. In this cold world without the sun, humanity nearly went extinct. At the brink of extinction, the surviving humans studied the creations of these cracks, causing the world's technology to develop rapidly but chaotically. Eventually, through the efforts of 13 pioneers, a fabricated sun was raised. Although there still were many dark areas, humanity once again had a vast land to survive on and maintain that for hundreds of years, forming a new human civilization called the New Sun world. Unlike most games with limited content, New Sun's vast open world allowed for countless unknown props and content, giving rise to many players trading rare items or information, resulting in a chaotic in-game marketplace. Chenchi, as a minor grinder, had made some small money selling rare items and guides and was a moderately famous strategy blogger. Transmigrated. I have no choice but to accept it. As if. Chen Qi clenched his fist tightly, feeling the sea breeze on his cheek. Though hard to believe, when scanning the pirates around him, the bloody smell, the beating heart, forced him to accept the reality before him. But what is going on now? What will these pirates do to me? Chen Qi pressed his temple with his hand. According to the original host's memory, he was originally a young man born in Daluo town of the Moonstone Islands. His parents had died, and he failed the spiritual awakening test in town, thus missing college. Not long ago, during a fishing trip, an unknown creature burrowed into his spine, causing him to suffer horrific mutation disease. To cure his illness, he decided to go to the big city, hoping to make a name for himself and earn the money to cure his mutation. However, his youthful ambition had yet to take off when he was tricked by his so-called relatives, sold to a human trafficking gang, and then resold to the Black Whale pirate group's Sosh Arc. Ultimately, he became a toy for these pirates betting on human fights, where even surviving the next second was uncertain. Orphaned, gravely ill from the start, and kidnapped. What kind of hellish starting point? Chen Qi finished recalling the information in his mind, furrowing his brows even more. New Sun had a lot of randomness, including random starting points and random player origin and talents, starting as an aspiring youth, student, detective, dancer, etc. According to the difficulty of the start, players would receive different spiritual awakening talents. I'm a slave kidnapped by pirates. Chen Qi's head throbbed. The pirates who kidnapped him were presumably the Black Whale pirate group, the rulers of the high seas. At the start, I'm on the ship of a late-game boss faction? Even though it was just one of their many ships, it was not an opponent he, currently weak, could challenge. Any low-level pirate here could kill him 10 times, 100 times. Even in boastful and exaggerated game forums, his starting point would definitely be considered hellish. A sense of helplessness instantly surged in his heart. I think I saw a prompt earlier, Chen Qi called upon the panel in his mind, as a transmigrated player and spiritually awakened individual. Semi-illusory text appeared before his eyes. Name, Qi Nature Form, Lamb, you are a born explorer, your inspiration is far above the average person, race, ordinary human, mildly infected, if not treated in time, you are very likely to turn into a tentacle monster obsessed with reproduction. Occupation card, none equipment, a tattered black burlap outfit with minimal warmth effect. Attributes, Constitution, 7, affected by infection, Strength, 8 Inspiration, 35 Agility, 14 Luck, 6, average adult human attribute is 10, overall evaluation, a weak slave with slight mutation, so there is one. Chen Qi was delighted as he scanned the light screen before him. High Inspiration, high Agility, average Constitution and Strength. And infected in the spine, if not treated in time, he'll turn into a tentacle monster obsessed with reproduction. At this moment, another light screen appeared. On the high seas, you have awakened the special spiritual talent Deep Sea Falling Star, Spiritual Awakening. Just like in the game, at the start, every player experienced spiritual awakening, gaining a talent that granted special perks for their starting point. Chen Qi swallowed hard and quickly checked his spiritual talent Deep Sea Falling Star. Deep Sea Falling Star, Nature Form, Lamp Deep Sea Affinity Level 1, although you do not have the bloodline of deep sea creatures, your spirituality still emits a faint aura from ancient beings of the deep sea. Weaker ancient species will see you as their equal, and most deep sea beasts will no longer regard you as human but as kin. This ability can be turned on or off at will. Lamp's Enlightenment, you have a higher chance of gaining more enlightening information, 2 attributes. Chen Qi's hand trembled slightly. This is too lucky. As someone who was usually unlucky, he had never seen such a mind-blowing spiritual talent. Typically, spiritual talents only had one attribute, offering bonuses like weapon proficiency, increased appetite, increased luck, improved inspiration, or an enchanting demon aura. The first attribute alone, Deep Sea Affinity, was an extremely powerful one. According to his knowledge, such an attribute would only appear with a small probability when a player was completely assimilated by an ancient sea monster, resulting in total body deformation. Not to mention the second attribute, Lamp's Enlightenment, which was also an outstanding talent. Getting either one alone was enough to be considered super lucky. These 2 attribute spiritual talents really exist. Chen Qi couldn't help but marvel. He always thought it was a myth. Usually, these levels of spiritual talents could only be found in hidden mainline bosses who could torment players repeatedly. Your deep sea affinity has influenced the deep sea creature in your spine. It feels your terrifying aura, stops infecting your body, and expresses temporary goodwill towards you. Your body has received a 5-point strength and 5-point agility boost due to the mutation infection. Can it work like this? Chen Qi looked at the prompt and immediately felt his heavy body become much lighter. According to the panel, his spine was infected by a deep sea creature. This talent could actually suppress the deep sea creature's infection, thereby enhancing his body. In the early game, a 5-point increase in strength and a 5-point increase in agility was already a substantial boost. Good luck. Chenchi immediately stretched his muscles. Bang! A loud noise drew his attention back to the pressing crisis before him. In front of him, a tattooed man resembling a bull swung a powerful punch, hitting a slave in the chest, blood splattering. No time to think. Chenchi took a deep breath. In New Sun, the higher the talent, the harder the starting point. Clearly, this start didn't give him time to calm down. Pirates love gambling, the more thrilling and bloody, the better. They had dragged out 10 slaves from a dark cabin, forcing them to fight on the deck. Only the one who defeated everyone else could enjoy the next meal and become one of them on the Sash arc. And he was one of these 10 slaves. However, in this human fight, the battle was not a chaotic brawl of 10 people. It was a 1 versus 9 crushing battle. A slave called Black Bull, with his terrifying 2-meter-tall body, was crushing the other slaves into submission. Even though the other slaves had joined forces beforehand, they still couldn't shake the slave named Black Bull. Bam! Bam! With a roar, Black Bull grabbed the neck of one slave and slammed him onto the deck. The others were already lying on the ground, lifeless. Only I am left. Chenchi slowly retreated, glancing at the deck. On the deck, there were various weapons thrown by the pirates, available for use. Chenchi picked up a nearby scimitar and gripped it tightly. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Black Bull laughed maniacally, his chest muscles covered in black tattoos moving. He glanced around and then pointed a bloodied finger. Kid, you're the only one left. Chapter 2, Ships. Dr. Humans instinctively fear when facing creatures larger than themselves at close range. The crimson killing intent of Black Bull bore down on him like a ferocious beast, heavily pressing on his body. Huff, huff. Chenchi gripped the knife handle tightly, yet his body couldn't stop trembling. Having just crossed over, was he about to face death? The Ageless Switch, the Steam Mecha, transcendent powers. He really didn't want to become an unnamed corpse in the sea before getting to know this world. No, more likely there wouldn't even be a corpse left, Chenchi thought with self-deprecating bitterness, then fixed his gaze on Black Bull. My starting agility isn't low, and Black Bull has just been through an 8-person gauntlet, his stamina greatly drained. On top of that, I've just gained 5 points of strength and 5 points of agility. In the early stages, that's already quite high. According to Chenchi's game experience, despite the apparent disparity in weight, he should have a fighting chance. Black Bull didn't attack immediately but, catching his breath, picked up a long-handled axe. Kid, stick your butt out, I'm going to chop your ass in two. Opportunity. Chenchi bent down, lowering his center of gravity, and delivered a stabbing strike from below. Clang. Black Bull was too slow to block with his axe and could only bend his arm, bearing the chopping blow with his forearm. Looking for death. After blocking, Black Bull roared angrily and, finding the right angle, swung his thigh out in a fierce whipping kick. Does this Black Bull not feel pain? Chenchi quickly withdrew his knife, then took a step back, dodging the attack. Good thing I didn't get greedy. It was his first time delivering such a violent strike against someone, and the counterattack was fiercer and quicker than he had imagined. However, Black Bull was ultimately just a human. After counterattacking, his arm couldn't stop trembling. In terms of speed and reaction, I have the upper hand. Chenchi clasped the knife handle, searching for another opportunity to strike. Whoa. His attack immediately ignited the passion of the pirates spectating. They had thought no one was a match for Black Bull, but here was someone daring to strike him. Kid, that was a beautiful chop. Kid, do you know your odds are? A whole 30 to 1, 30 to 1. Kill Black Bull, kid, and you'll be a free man, a member of our Black Whale group. Not only that, boss will reward you with a bottle of rum. Win the fight, and I'll reward you with a night with a woman. By the goddess above, one strike gets you all excited. Do you see Black Bull cowering? The previously one-sided bet was filled with suspense once more. Many pirates seeking high odds started cheering for him. At the last moment, I underestimated you, Runt. I won't give you a second chance. Black Bull's eyes twitched, and, tilting his head back, he seemed no longer a slave but rather a noble knight wielding the power of life and death over the common folk. He took 2 forceful steps forward with his front foot and swung his axe towards the opponent's neck. The motion and speed were stiff. Chenchi sidestepped the blow and, seizing the opportunity, delivered a cutting strike to Black Bull's deltoid. Critical hit. His blow cruelly carved through flesh and blood. Black Bull's condition wasn't good. He was, after all, just an ordinary human whose stamina had reached its limit after prolonged battle. Meanwhile, the accumulation of grievous wounds slowed his movements considerably. Chenchi saw the glimmer of victory. The advantage is mine. His opponent's life hung by a thread. How could this be? Black Bull shook his head. The man who had slain many, now unable to even keep his stance stable. As the situation reversed, the pirates started to jeer again. Black Bull, it's so hard just to kill the last one. If it's too hard, take out your weapon. Kill him quickly. Black Bull, at the last moment, think of your woman in another man's arms, and fight with all you've got. Amidst the shouts, Black Bull seemed like a pressure cooker about to explode. He had once been a minor mob boss, sold onto this ship for stealing the boss's woman, always seeing himself as far superior to these lowly and weak slaves. Trash from the backwoods. I cannot die at the hands of a country bumpkin like you. I will chop you up and feed you to the fishes. Black Bull gasped for air, contemplating his next attack. At this crucial moment, he didn't want to die at the hands of this little runt because of underestimation. Although weak in strength and stature, his reaction was too quick. Blind chopping was useless, it would only reveal flaws. Come on. Chen-Chi focused intently, ready to perform a dodge and counterattack that would end Black Bull's life. However, in the next second, something unexpected occurred. Black Bull, gritting his teeth, didn't advance but instead retreated, then violently snatched a disgusting squid-like thing from the deck. Instantly, the pirates let out exclamations of shock. Black Bull, I can't believe you dare use a parasitic sea beast. No way, Black Bull, it's you who resorts to a parasitic sea beast at the end. That's it, the bet is over. Kid, you're about to lose your head. Parasitic sea beast. Chen-Chi broke out in a cold sweat, with memories of the creature flashing through his mind. As the name suggests, parasitic sea beasts are a type of creature that parasitizes humans. In the Witch Sea, such beings are exceedingly dangerous, dreaded by all fishermen. Parasitic sea beasts drag humans into the sea, transforming them into monsters. However, in the eyes of pirates who know no taboos, these parasitic creatures are not merely dangerous beings but tools to temporarily enhance one's combat prowess. Though highly lethal, a person parasitized by a sea beast will, for a short time, exhibit speed and strength surpassing that of a human. Chapter 2 Ships Doctor 2 in the player community. This was also a hot item only seen in the mid stage. Kill you, Black Bull repeated as he pressed the parasitic sea beast into the wound on his shoulder. The tentacles of the sea beast stretched into his body from the wound, then violently plunged in, and in an instant, deep blue veins surfaced on Black Bull's exposed skin. Black Bull was already strong. With the parasitic enhancement, his speed and strength are now beyond what any beginner's panel can withstand. Chen-Chi analyzed calmly as he continued to retreat. He was too weak now, powerless. These pirates would actually use such a forbidden item. Damn it. Which bastard left this sea beast lying around as a weapon? Such a thing should be kept by the boat medic sister. Alright. A bet's a bet, pay up. The pirates also began to curse among themselves, some of them, for the sake of their money, began to speak up for Chen-Chi. Chen-Chi couldn't hear their words clearly. Black Bull's beast-like murderous intent permeated every inch of his body, leaving him in grave danger. He had to focus all his attention on the opponent's movements. Die. The next instant, the giant right arm of the parasitic Black Bull, holding an axe single-handedly, charged at him like a massive mountain. Too fast. He could only react instinctively. Bang. At the moment of their encounter, Black Bull's mouth curled into a confident smile, but the smile quickly faded along with his consciousness. The scimitar violently thrust into Black Bull's heart. Ha. Chen-Chi grasped the handle of the knife, twisted it, and looked towards Black Bull, whose face wore an expression of disbelief as copious amounts of blood gushed from his chest. It hit. With a loud bang, Black Bull fell heavily to the ground. Defeated in an instant? The sudden turn of events left many pirates in a moment of silence, unable to believe what had just happened. The parasitic sea beast-infested Black Bull had been defeated in an instant? Chen-Chi's hands trembled, and from the corner of his eye, he watched the right shoulder of Black Bull. The only parasitic sea beast slowly separated from Black Bull's shoulder, pulling away sharply while extracting its flesh and blood. The sea beast looked like a rabbit scared by a lion. Without the power of the parasitic sea beast, Black Bull's body had no ability to resist. Why did the sea beast run away? Deep sea affinity. Chen-Chi probably understood. His deep sea affinity could make deep sea creatures see him as one of their own. The creature attached to Black Bull likely felt fear or some other emotion towards him. As the parasitic sea beast fled, Black Bull's movements at that moment also became incredibly stiff. And others didn't pay much attention, as sea beasts were inherently unpredictable and dangerous creatures. He had won. Chen-Chi let out a long breath, his knife-holding hand still shaking uncontrollably, this start hardly giving him any time to develop. Looking at the steaming blood on the scimitar, Chen-Chi gave a slight smile. Regardless, he had won, survived, for now. Well done. You've made a good amount of money for me. Well done, from now on, you're free. Haha, Black Bull, You dare to use such dangerous sea beasts, even if the ship's doctor has modified them, they aren't for you to use. Black-eyed Captain, I like this kid. Don't mistreat him, okay? In a brief silence, the pirates burst into celebration, especially those who had bet on him. Chen Qi felt a great relief, sat down, and the world seemed exceptionally quiet. Before him, Black Bull still had a breath of life, muttering something under his breath. However, in the overwhelming cheers of the pirates, it was impossible to hear clearly. Compared to the last words of a slave before them, they were more concerned about the money in their hands. After the gambling ended and the pirates had divided the money, a middle-aged man wearing a black captain's hat finally walked towards him. Chen Qi leaned on the railing, watching the seabirds fly across the sky, his mind filled with numerous thoughts. He had traversed time and space, and was now on a pirate ship. In the New Day, the Black Whale Group was a terrifying force closely tied to the main storyline, and in the game, it was also a force with a strong ability to court death. In the main storyline of New Day, the entire Black Whale Group would undertake countless dangerous voyages to summon terrifying beings from other worlds. Chen Qi shook his head. Although he had awakened his spiritual sense, he didn't have a real transcendent occupation yet. In a post-apocalyptic transcendent world without formidable strength, one couldn't even talk about exploring the world, let alone ensure one's own safety. According to the setting of New Day, only by defeating monsters in the dungeons known as cracks could one obtain spiritual points to enhance skills and the rare occupation cards to become transcendent. If it had been a free start, he would have already killed several slimes, bought weapons, practiced skills, and prepared to enter the crack. But now, all his actions were restricted by the pirates, he couldn't develop properly. Moreover, the mortality rate of the pirates was quite high, which is why they recruited new crew members from time to time. One day, he might just be used as cannon fodder. This was not a place to stay for long. He had to find a place to leave this ship and go to a real safe haven suitable for beginners. Only there could he develop steadily and truly utilize his talents. Kid. A tall, thin man came directly in front of him. It was indeed the captain of the Saw Shark under the Black Whale Group, black-eyed. He had a black smoking pipe in his mouth, around 40 years old, with a beard and both eyes seemed to lack whites, just pure black. Chen Qi sized him up. As an NPC in a vast open-world game, he had never seen this minor captain on any forum. The only thing he was certain of was that, with his current strength, this obscure black-eyed captain could easily control his fate. According to the agreement, winning the duel meant you could get a job on the ship. And according to pirate rules, all jobs on the ship were to be assigned by the captain. If the other party adhered to the agreement, hopefully, it was a job suitable for escaping, Chen Qi prayed in his mind. The black-eyed captain studied Chen Qi and opened his mouth. Little guy, I didn't expect you to be able to defeat Black Bull. That was indeed beyond my expectations. Your final strike was fierce enough, not afraid of death, which is a required lesson for every one of our warriors. But you know, according to the rules of the Witch Sea, any sailor infected with the sea disease is a plague, a menace, and should be immediately buried at sea. If it were one of the naval ships, you would already be bound tightly and thrown into the sea. Fortunately, we the Black Whale Group don't mind these rules. You should be very thankful. Alright, let me think about what job to assign you. I still have to thank you? Chen Qi thought sarcastically. Black-eyed tapped his temple with his finger, sizing up his ship. We don't lack crew to handle salvaging, and you, a young man, probably lack specialized knowledge and haven't properly exercised your body. What positions are vacant? Captain, the assistant who helped me with the medicinal herbs just died, give him to me. Chen Qi's ears perked up, and his body trembled slightly. A gentle female voice reached his ears from his left. Chapter 3, Crack Female. Chen Qi turned his head, blinked, and showed a slight surprise. Someone was actually taking the initiative to ask for him. In front of him was a black-haired female wearing a half-crow mask and dressed in a black apothecary's outfit. The only ship's doctor on this vessel, and one of the few literate individuals on board, most didn't even know her real name, calling her Little Crow instead. From the half-exposed delicate and fair face, it was clear that she was a young woman. Her image stood in stark contrast to this bloodthirsty band of pirates. Chen Qi's gaze fell upon the ship's doctor, his pupils contracting. He recognized her. To be exact, he had seen her in popular videos. As a transmigrator from another world into a game, he had finally encountered a character he recognized. She was a game character who had gained massive popularity recently. A mad pirate doctor passionate about studying deep-sea creatures, with a wild fascination for marine life, but with her madness came a second identity. That was of an undercover agent planted within the Black Whale Group. She had been secretly relaying information about the Black Whale Group, sabotaging many of their operations and saving numerous lives. In the middle of the game, To stop the Black Whale Group's massacre, she injected herself with a fatal mutagenic potion and transformed into a banshee, defeating over 1,000 pirates and nearly 100 players who had joined the city's defense, all amidst her desperate cries. With her stunning beauty in her final moments and her unique story, she became quite famous among players, inspiring numerous fan creations. In the Witch Sea game, many players joined evil forces, and under the official videos, they spammed revive her, wanting to resurrect the deceased Ms. Crow and change her destiny. Of course, with Chen Chi's current strength, he couldn't even control his own fate, let alone change someone else's. Although he could defeat the Black Bull, at the end of the day, he was still just an ordinary person who hadn't stepped onto the path of the transcendent, leaving his fate to be controlled by others. But this was also quite good news. If he could work under Little Crow, at the very least his life would be much safer than under other ferocious pirates. The black-eyed captain stood up, exhaling a puff of thick smoke. You want this man? Did your last helper die, Little Crow? That's the 7th one already. Dead. 7 of them. Chen Chi instantly felt as if he had been slapped in the face. Working under the ship's doctor might not be so safe after all. Little Crow bent down, her face scented with medicinal herbs as she leaned in slightly, her red eyes sweeping across his face. Yes, I've repeatedly instructed him, but he still made an error in handling the herbs. I need a new assistant, one who can read and learn quickly, she said. The black-eyed captain asked, can you read, boy? Chen Chi confidently nodded his head. He was literate, just like the ship's doctor. The black-eyed captain pondered for a moment, then patted Chen Chi on the shoulder. All right, kid, work well under Little Crow. Here in the Black Whale Group, we never shortchange capable people. With us, you learn 10 times more than you ever did with hard work. After we return to port, you'll get 10 gold coins. By then, everyone who looked down on you will kneel and lick your boots. 10 gold coins. What a concept. That was enough to buy a decent small house in a big city. This promise was enormous indeed, Captain. Chen Chi could only pretend to be delighted, nodding his head. From now on, he was to be the assistant to a ship's doctor. Black Crow turned around. Follow me to the medical room, you have a task today. Yes, Black Crow. Big sister. Chen Chi followed her, and due to the forum, he almost called her Little Black Crow just now. Although in the player's eyes she was the cute yet scheming Miss Black Crow, now she was his actual superior, the kind he had no choice but to comply with. If she said 1, he could absolutely not say 2. The medical room was located on the 2nd level of the ship, in a rather large independent cabin. His former residence had been the slave quarters, where over 50 people were crammed together in a space filled with stifling and dirty air. Yet the medical room before his eyes was large enough to be thrice the size of one slave quarter. The air was suffused with a faint mix of herbal and disinfectant odors. Light passed through frosted glass windows and brass chandeliers, casting mottled shadows on the wooden wall panels and brass medical instruments. On a wooden table to the left, there were even 7 glass jars containing sea creatures. Chen Chi excitingly swept his gaze across the room before him, his start in the game being the ultimate blank slate, with only a very narrow house in his original owner's hometown of Morrow Town. If only he could have a room like this in another world, how wonderful that would be. Black Crow entered the medical room and, after making sure the door was closed, said softly, "Take off your clothes." Chen Chi blinked, somewhat disbelieving his own ears. Take them off? He had heard stories on the forum about the Witch Sea region of the game, where the people were upright and honest. He never expected it to be so overpowering. He had never been ordered like this before and was momentarily stunned. Without giving Chen Chi time to think, Black Crow commanded again, "Take them off." All right. Although he was very unwilling, he had no power to resist at the moment and had to survive for the time being. Only when he became strong could he turn the tables. Chen Chi immediately took off his blood-stained and sweaty shirt, revealing his upper body. The body he had after transmigration was not strong. In this world, such ordinary bodies were not uncommon. Except for the blue tattoo on his back, because of the spine infection from the sea beast, one could clearly see the blue patterns on his back that resembled both a spider and tentacles. Black Crow bent over, her gaze focused and sharp, staring at the pattern on Chen Chi's back. As I thought, you have been infected by a special sea beast. This sea beast didn't consume blood, didn't damage the subcutaneous tissue, and didn't have the unique chi of a sea beast. It's incredibly mild. During Chen Chi's confrontation with the Black Hawks earlier, Black Crow had noticed his back. As a ship's medic who specialized in researching deep-sea biology, she had developed a terrifying obsession with deep-sea organisms. Sea beasts were usually highly aggressive towards humans, and even for her, someone well-traveled and knowledgeable, this was the first time she had encountered such a unique organism. And the sea beast appeared so tranquil, as if it had become one with Chen Chi. Huff, huff. Truly wondrous, It's a pity this ship lacks machinery to safely examine the depths of your spine. This sea beast might very well form the basis of a groundbreaking medical paper. And it seemed quite cute too. The little crow's body trembled slightly, her face flushed crimson, and even her tone became extremely excited as she unconsciously reached out her hand, slowly touching. Crow. Big sister. Sister Crow, keep your cool. Chen-Chi cautioned, clearly feeling the intense heat of the little crow's breath on his back. The other party's obsession and madness for the sea beast had somewhat exceeded his expectations. Deep-sea fanatics, truly terrifying. If he did not intervene, he feared the next moment her hand would plunge into his body and yank out his spine alive. Though she appeared frail, this person was a bona fide transcendent. Cough, cough. Hearing the reminder, the little crow coughed twice, straightened her mask. You change out of your clothes later, then take a good bath. Oh, find somewhere concealed to change, it's best not to be seen by others. Among that bunch, there are those who fancy someone like you. She immediately resumed the professional demeanor of a ship physician, retrieving a set of clean clothes from a cabinet. Cotton jackets, shirts, trousers, and slip-resistant boots and gloves. Thank you, Sister Crow. Chen-Chi was covered in a strong smell of blood and sweat, and his tattered clothes indeed needed replacing. He accepted the clothes, felt them, and concluded they were decently made. There was something hard underneath the clothes. Chen-Chi pulled out the hard object, and blue ethereal text appeared before his eyes once more. Collector, description, a brass steampunk pistol, manufactured with a special technique, with twice the penetrating power of an ordinary pistol. A pistol? Why give this to me? Chen-Chi's mouth gaped slightly, startled by the sudden surprise. This device certainly beats a curved sword any day. In the Witch Sea, pistols were not rare, but this one, crafted with special techniques, had an elevated penetrating power that made it effective against monsters. Although this weapon did not possess transcendent elements, it was famous in player forums, produced by the Hammer Armory Corporation, and definitely a divine artifact for pioneering. In a pay-to-win game, it would at least cost 648 gold coins to be gifted. Why, Sister Crow. Chen-Chi, breaking out in a cold sweat, turned to look at the little crow. He knew, the value of this pistol could possibly fetch 5 slaves like himself. Seeing his panicked expression, the little crow revealed a hint of a pleased smile. You're my assistant? I definitely don't want to see another assistant die so easily. Plus, you possess significant medical value. In short, this is for your protection, you'll need it soon. The little crow picked up her notes and pen, drawing what she had seen on the back and smiling obsessively. Gonna need it soon. A gun? Chen-Chi tilted his head, clueless. The little crow placed a finger on her chin. Don't you know? I just remembered, you used to be a slave and are completely unaware of the Saw Shark's destination this time. Isn't the Saw Shark headed for a major city? The Saw Shark was filled with slaves, so Chen-Chi subconsciously thought their target would be a city. As a male slave like himself, he could very well be sold to some perverted wealthy female merchant to experience a life of suppressed luxury and fame. The little crow picked up a list of potions from the table. No, the Saw Shark's next destination is not a city, but a crack, a dangerous crack located above the deep sea. She calmly stated a terrifying fact. A crack. That single word made Chen-Chi's heart pound violently. In the context of New Day, cracks were passages to other worlds. Within these cracks, one could find transcendent power and technology, as well as transcendent resources. The core reason the world of New Day survived in a sunless environment was due to the power of these cracks. The transcendent items, powers, and technologies found within were coveted treasures sought after by countless individuals. Of course, the rarer the transcendent item, the greater the danger. Risk and opportunity coexisted. For most ordinary people, the cracks were places where fates could be changed. And for players, the fastest way to become stronger in the early stages was to venture into a crack and acquire transcendent resources. Given the uniqueness of his talent, it seemed his crisis was not about to end so soon. Chen-Chi lowered his head, caressing the wonderful collector in his hand. His intuition told him that the crack the Saw Shark was headed for was no mere novice crack. The danger of the crack would bring fear and chaos, and within that fear and chaos lay the perfect opportunity for his escape. A chance to flee from the Black Whale group. Chen-Chi's heartbeat quickened even more as he glanced out of the ship's medical room window. The black waves churned, and more fog began to swallow up the Saw Shark, bringing so many slaves to a crack at sea. The survival rate in the impending crack was not likely to be high. A glint of light flashed in Chen-Chi's eyes. Transcendence, and the freedom that was rightfully his, might be right before him. Chapter 4 Rewards. Chen-Chi was thinking about the next plan. The little crow shook her head. She saw a novice's unique excitement in the other person's eyes. In this vast sea, too many young people harbored their families' hopes, stepping from the small islands into the coastal cities, aiming to carve out a career. And the cracks, especially the unknown ones, contained a fortune in valuable things. This casual sum of money could exceed what an ordinary person could make in a year. Among them, there were those especially willing to take risks, tired of the day-to-day work, wanting to step into a crack, earn a fortune, and become a respected transcendent. The city newspapers loved to publish these rare success stories every day, making many newcomers subconsciously overlook the high mortality rate of the unknown cracks. The little crow asked, "Have you been to an unknown crack?" "I've been to quite a few and am even a well-known guide on the list." Chen Qi thought to himself, but the original owner of his body indeed hadn't stepped into any unknown crack missions. He hadn't even visited the safe mine crack in his hometown Maro Town. "No," Chen Qi replied. "Just as I thought." The little crow smiled slightly, sincerely advising, "Don't believe the newspapers. Aside from a few incidents, the rest is made up. Striving to get rich overnight is a very difficult task. Unknown cracks are often extremely dangerous, especially for a newcomer like you. Remember, this gun is for your protection, and not a tool for seeking wealth. The crack we are heading to next will be even more dangerous than you imagine." Although most pirates were desperate treasure seekers, she did not want a newcomer, a valuable patient, to die so soon. "Sister Crow, what kind of dangers are there in the crack we're going to?" Chen Qi feigned fear as he asked. If he wanted to plan an escape, he needed more information. The little crow walked over to the sea beast tank and gently caressed a squid-like sea beast, a large sea beast den. In there reside creatures capable of completely swallowing a merchant ship. The moment you see them, they're twisting and crawling, damp bodies will slowly permeate into your body, swallowing you from top to bottom, little by little, like a cherry. Moreover, this is just the known information. Speaking, the little crow's mouth curved up, paired with the pitch-black crow mask, revealing a creepy smile. Large sea beast. This is just too awesome. Chen Qi was delighted. He now possessed deep-sea affinity, and most deep-sea creatures posed no danger to him. They were all his beloved kith and kin. It could be said that this crack, feared by the pirates, was tailor-made for him. But considering the little crow's sinister smile, he absolutely could not reveal this joy at the moment. Absolutely not. Since she was his immediate superior, he still needed to give her face, playing along with her villainous grin. Chen Qi cooperatively sucked in a breath of cold air, indicating it was indeed terrifying. Seeing his expression, the little crow reassured happily, "But don't worry, in the crack, your job is to assist me, namely to heal injured crew members. Dealing with sea beasts is not your responsibility. As long as you do your work well, even if we run into danger, I will protect you." "Of course, that's provided you prove you're worth protecting." The little crow patted his shoulder. Chen Qi nodded, he roughly understood. Before returning, as long as he didn't do something too outrageous, he could gain protection from this ship's Dr. Miss. After speaking, the little crow's tone became serious. "All right, that's enough small talk. Next, I will introduce your job. As per the ship's rules, your dinner depends on your performance at work. If your work causes any losses, not only will you miss your meal, but you will also be whipped." The little crow detailed the tasks of a ship doctor's assistant. The job of a ship doctor's assistant was not complex, mainly room cleaning and handling medicinal materials. Cleaning rooms was not difficult, as the little crow herself was a person who emphasized cleanliness and tidiness. The real challenge was handling the medicinal materials. Apart from regular herbs, there was a very special type of medicinal material, sea beast. The small sea beasts in the ship doctor's room each carried a large amount of rare medicinal materials. For example, the pearls under the special jellyfish umbrella, the special venom inside the octopus. These sea beasts were considered transcendent animals, and their body parts could be used to create transcendent potions. However, considering their renewability and a little crow's special preferences, one absolutely could not harm these sea beasts while collecting these materials. Although these sea beasts were soaked in a special fluid, they were still extremely dangerous. When extracting these materials, if not handled properly, it could easily result in fatal injuries. This was like trying to pull a tooth from a vigorous living tiger's mouth. According to the little crow, the previous assistant died because he mishandled the operation, forgot to wear gloves while drunk, and got infected by the sea beast venom. "Here, take this." The little crow took out 2 books. Chen Qi received the sea beast medicinal materials collection guide and a book on normal human first aid. Before reaching the crack, apart from the mission, he also needed to find time to practice shooting and gather some information on the ship. This task was just fine. The little crow instructed, "Extracting medicinal materials is the main task, but it's a bit difficult for a newcomer. You can practice with the safe sea beast tanks on the table. Chapter 4 Rewards 2 If you do a good job in the next few days, I'll give you a special reward." "A reward?" Chen Qi was instantly energized. With other pirates, there were hardly any extra rewards. Saying this, Little Crow used a key to open a door inside the ship doctor's room. Behind the door, there were glass jars filled with sea beasts. At a glance, there were at least 40 such glass jars. By tonight, if you can extract from more than 3, I'll add meat to your dinner. If you can finish extracting from 5 jars, I'll give you a life-saving medicine. If your learning and hands-on abilities are strong, and you can do more than 10, I'll give you an amazing medicine. The value of this medicine is such that even if you work hard for a year, you might not be able to afford it. What if it's more than 15? 20, that's my personal level. Little Crow scoffed with a snort and a cold laugh. More than 15, what a joke. Extracting medicinal materials from the body of a sea beast might sound simple, but it actually tests one's patience and technique a lot. Even Little Crow, a veteran ship doctor, probably could only manage 20 by tonight. Don't set your goals too high at the start, aim for realism, keep your patience. Little Crow picked up a medicine chest. Alright, I'm going to check the sanitation on the ship and distribute medicines. Remember, when dealing with sea beasts, don't lose patience, patience is key. Remember, every single one of these sea beasts is extremely precious, very precious, precious enough to make you work an extra 10 years. After giving these instructions, Little Crow left the ship doctor's room, leaving Chen Qi alone. Phew. Once the other person had left, Chen Qi sat down in a chair and flipped through the Sea Beast Medicinal Materials Collection Guide. In the book, there were numerous cases of severe injury due to failure. The other world was tough too, with people dying for the sake of extracting medicinal materials, as well as damned mortgages to learn about. 5 minutes passed in the blink of an eye. Alright, in 5 minutes, I've totally got it. Chen Qi closed the book, his mind having fully understood how to extract medicinal materials from sea beasts. Right now his newbie panel was too weak, he needed to develop it for a while. Little Crow was a doctor with many potent medicines. If he could get these medicine rewards, it would be a considerable help in his later actions. Before planning his escape, it was best to behave obediently. Chen Qi walked into the room where the sea beast jars were stored, put on gloves, and began work. In theory, since he possessed deep sea affinity, sea beasts wouldn't attack him, making this job of extracting materials child's play. However, the specific effects of deep sea affinity still needed more validation. Firstly, Chen Qi took a fancy to a black octopus the size of a human head. He slowly extended his hand into the jar, dipped it into the water, and reached under the octopus's head into its mouth. Then, he lifted his middle and index fingers, carefully plucking off grainy special medicinal materials from the octopus's body. According to the book, every step was important. Slowly, with patience. Suddenly, the octopus's tentacles and suckers fiercely contracted, gripping his wrist. Damn, a mistake. His mind understood, but his hands did not. At this moment, the tentacles of this deep-sea monster forcefully writhed, emitting an indescribable strange sound, like a deep cry or a mournful tune. What was it trying to convey to him? Was it fear, hostility, assimilation, or an introduction to their god? Chen Qi broke out in a cold sweat. Even with the talent for deep-sea affinity, he did not understand the language of deep-sea monsters. He could only rely on a kind of intuition, his body's intuition, to feel the information from this ancient creature. Feel, slowly feel. As long as he took his time, he could understand this sea beast's terrifying language. Chen Qi relaxed his body and focused his attention on his hand. Finally, in an instant, Chen Qi grasped the meaning of that ancient creature's language. Ah, that feels good, more damn. The moment he felt it, Chen Qi's heart went cold, and he couldn't help but curse, then quickly grasped the material and pulled his hand out of the jar. His face showed terror, his pupils constricted, looking at the terrifying octopus sea beast in the jar. What the hell had he just sensed? Was that the kind of message a deep-sea monster should be sending to humans? What about its dignity as a monster? Had his earlier mistake touched the sea beast's sweet spot? Wait, what part of the sea beast had he just touched? Chen Qi shook his head, preferring not to think too deeply about it. He definitely wasn't any sort of deep-sea creature enthusiast. Regardless, he had extracted the material, and his understanding of deep-sea affinity had increased. This also proved that his deep-sea affinity talent was indeed powerful. Bang! Just then, the door to the ship doctor's room was flung open, and Little Crow's little head slowly peeked in, looking towards the still shaken Chen Qi. She had just passed by and heard the sea beast's sound, as well as Chen Qi's retreating noise. Some sea beasts' cries hold a kind of magic power that can make people feel fear. Clearly, Chen Qi must have gotten scared. For an average person, perhaps sea beasts were still too terrifying, Little Crow thought as she shook her head gently. At this rate, forget about more than 5 by tonight, it was questionable if he could even manage 3. And there was even the possibility of developing a deep-sea creature phobia. How was he going to continue being her assistant in the future? It wasn't easy to train a good assistant, Little Crow thought with a sigh, and comforting said, "Keep calm, take it slow, there's still plenty of time until tonight." Chapter 4 Rewards 3 Don't fear a single failure. This fear can hardly be avoided, Chen Qi thought to himself. After saying that, the little raven withdrew her head and left again. Her work today was plentiful. As they neared the target crack, more and more people began to show signs of discomfort. TSK. Next time, be more careful. Chen Qi patted his face and looked at these oddly shaped small sea beasts, rolling up his sleeves again. He could now be sure that, with his deep-sea affinity, it was extremely simple for him to extract these medicinal materials. To him, these sea beasts were not monsters but like human children holding lollipops. And all he needed to do was quickly snatch the lollipops from them. It would take at most an hour to collect everything. He just needed to casually take some medicinal materials from the sea beasts every once in a while. This also meant he had lots of free time today. Chen Qi turned his head, looked through the small window to the outside, and at the collector's pistol at his waist. The fog was getting thicker, they were not far from the crack. He wasn't proficient in the use of firearms, nor did he have knowledge of close combat weapons. He needed to take some time to enhance his combat skills. At the same time, to escape, it would be best to observe the condition of the entire ship. That's decided then. Chen Qi's eyes showed determination. Time to get to work. A busy day passed in a flash, and as night fell, the saw shark sailed smoothly through the darkness. Done. Chen Qi collapsed into the chair with ease. Today, he had completed his work and had observed the entire saw shark. Also, he had taken some time to practice shooting with the pirates outside. "I'm back, how did the work go?" The off-work little raven opened the door, carrying 2 dry loaves of bread in her right hand, a medicine chest on her shoulder, and a leather whip in her left hand. The whip. Chen Qi, who was resting in the chair, saw this object and instantly tensed up. He became fully alert. On the pirate ship, where an atmosphere of violence was heavy, newcomers were usually targeted. Pirates would look for any excuse to beat them up. Especially someone like Chen Qi, who had no background and was a slave-turned crew member. Today, while observing the saw shark, Chen Qi heard talk from some of the crew about Dr. Raven. This cute yet scheming Miss Raven, from the previous world's website, was considered a terrifying quack doctor by these bloodthirsty pirates. She laughed creepily during treatments, didn't administer anesthesia during surgery, and resorted to violence against patients who didn't follow medical orders. Through violence, Little Raven was an existence many crew members feared. If one considers her undercover status, this violence could likely be her form of retribution against pirates. However, according to Chen Qi's speculation, there was another reason. She might have a sadistic streak. Especially when she held a whip in her hand. This further confirmed his suspicion. This was definitely bad news for him. "Sister Raven, let me help you with that." Chen Qi immediately stepped forward, smoothly taking the medicine chest, the bread, and the whip from her, and then slowly placed them on the cabinet. "How did the work go?" Little Raven twirled her hand and asked. According to the management lessons the black-eyed captain gave her today, after giving sweetness, one must follow with bitterness. She thought it best to establish her authority over the new crew member tonight. After all, she wasn't very tall, and her voice wasn't harsh, so she couldn't intimidate people with just a look, like the black-eyed captain could. Chen Qi quickly replied, "The cleaning is done, and for the medicinal materials, according to the guide, I collected a total of 19 jars." "How many?" Little Raven's eager hand suddenly softened. 19. Chen Qi answered seriously again. The previous owner had experience dealing with sea beasts, so this number was not exaggerated. It wasn't 50 jars because he was lazy and wanted to be realistic. It wasn't 20 jars, as he wanted to give some face to his immediate superior, this little raven. Chapter 5 Yellow Needle Little Crow's little hands were somewhat chaotic, and a trace of confusion and urgency flashed in her eyes. The workload of 19, unless done in some rough manner, was difficult to achieve. "You aren't a reckless man, are you? Haven't any of the sea beast canisters been damaged yet?" She immediately checked all the sea beast canisters, fearing there might be an issue with the precious medicinal materials. Just as Chen Qi had said, 19 containers of medicinal materials had been extracted, and they had been extracted beautifully. Moreover, the sea beasts she usually raised, which always seemed listless, were unexpectedly full of energy today. This also meant that there were very few errors in the manipulation. "Nicely done." Little Crow let out a sigh of relief, her face slightly blushing, feeling a bit happy. But then she thought, without a reason to whip him, Little Crow sighed again. "Ah." Chen Qi shuddered instantly, as if whipped. "What are you sighing about?" I have spent half an hour laboriously completing this difficult task. Chen-Chi felt it. Even though he had done a nice job, she genuinely wanted to whip him. Little Crow adjusted her mask. She didn't really want to whip him and wasn't a sadist. As a firm Dipsy enthusiast, she just wanted an excuse to have Chen-Chi take off his shirt again, to take another look at the sea beast pattern on his back. And then symbolically whip his buttocks a couple of times. But this was 19. A considerably large workload. Why don't I whip him 19 times? No, that's just insane, a hellish thought. Little Crow denied. She must have made great efforts and seriously read every word of the Sea Beast Medicinal Materials Collection Guide, racking her brain to achieve this. The terrifying calls of the sea beasts had scared him along the way, but despite that, he had still overcome his fear and beautifully completed the task. Moreover, he had done so on an empty stomach. Such hard work, she didn't feel right to, as the black-eyed captain said, deliberately find fault with him. Tired from the day, Little Crow also collapsed into the chair, smiling. 19? How did you manage that? Just hard work would have been very difficult. Chen-Chi recalled the memory of the original person and rubbed his hands. I was born in Daluo Town on the Moonstone Islands, helped fishermen handle some sea beasts, and had taken university entrance exams, having a pretty decent aptitude. This post-apocalyptic world, after experiencing centuries of peace, each country had established academies dedicated to training transcendence. And his starting country, named Shell Kingdom, focused on money and had a developed industry. Its education sector was on the rise. In the Shell Kingdom, there were many excellent academies for training transcendence. However, unlike Earth's academies, these academies had much more stringent entry requirements, and the vast majority of students were either nobles or descendants of powerful transcendents. Commoners who wanted to enroll needed to have sufficiently high inspiration talent and pass various challenging professional exams to qualify, with a very low acceptance rate. Oh? You also took university entrance exams? Little Crow hadn't expected this little slave, like her, to have been a university entrance exam candidate. Even among commoners, families willing to attempt the exams usually had some assets. Becoming a slave aboard a pirate ship was a low-probability event. Chen-Chi responded, yes, I have a bit of inspiration talent, and applied to the Royal University twice but failed both times. I applied to a medical school jointly operated with the Golden Flower Bird Kingdom. Oh, did you get in? Chen-Chi asked. The game data created by the players mentioned Little Crow's medical skills but didn't mention her educational background. As soon as he asked, the warm atmosphere suddenly became a bit tense. Chen-Chi suddenly pictured a whip in his mind, and it seemed like he shouldn't have asked that question. If I had gotten in, how could I be on a pirate ship, acting like a crazy female pirate every day, chatting and laughing with a captured slave? Little Crow, somewhat speechlessly, propped up her face. What do you think? You know, these joint medical schools have very few places. We can only pick the leftovers from nobles and rich merchants. Of course, my own abilities weren't up to par at the time. I just became a first-tier transcendent healer apprentice and became complacent, missing this precious opportunity. After I got my healer apprentice certificate, I came out to make my way in the world for various reasons. Little Crow spoke, feeling somewhat sad. Healer apprentice certificate? According to the laws of the kingdom, only those with a junior doctor certification could become a licensed doctor. An apprentice certificate didn't qualify one to practice medicine. Chen-Chi was slightly surprised. In his memory, Little Crow was very skilled in medicine, and she ventured out after just completing her apprentice certificate. This was unlicensed practice. Definitely a black doctor. However, on a chaotic pirate ship, this was also normal. They underestimated me. Little Crow clenched her fist, boasting, "Don't think I'm just an apprentice, that's just because my status isn't fit for taking the tests. In the research of deep-sea disease, I might even be better than the legendary healers, the Flower Witch." Oh, really? Gurgle. Suddenly, a gentle rumble came from Chen-Chi's stomach. He was hungry. According to the ship's rules, new crew members weren't allowed to dine in the cafeteria. Only after working through a job with the pirate ship could they eat hot meals in the dining hall. The weary Little Crow looked at the bread on the cabinet and immediately sat up. Chapter 5 Yellow Needle 2. She was here to establish her authority and reward Chen-Chi, but somehow, they ended up chatting. And chatting quite excitedly. This way, all her authority would be gone, and in a few days, they would call her Little Crow in secret. Little Crow handed him 2 pieces of bread. Eat some bread first, with dried fruit. Chen-Chi took the bread and took a bite. The slightly sweet taste of the dried fruit burst on his taste buds. Refreshing. Compared to modern bread, it was so hard it almost felt like a stone, but for Chen-Chi, who had been starving all day, it was the ultimate delicacy. Little Crow picked up her medical kit. Almost forgot, your reward. According to their agreement, if he could complete more than 10 tasks, he would get a special potion. Extraordinary potion. Chen Qi swallowed his saliva. Being a master gamer, he knew the importance of potions. If he wanted to fight monsters early on, healing potions or strength potions were essential tools. Little Crow opened a hidden compartment in her medical kit, where several precious extraordinary potions were stored. Chen Qi took another bite of bread, his eyes filled with anticipation. Little Crow mumbled to herself as she rummaged through the compartment, "This one. No, too strong, your body can't handle it. This one is for dogs, also no. This one is meant for women, no good either." Finally, she grasped a yellow syringe. The golden liquid inside the syringe emitted a glow like gold. Chen Qi's eyes lit up. That was very likely the best early game extraordinary potion, the yellow needle. This one is too expensive, also no. She bit her lip and hesitated for a moment. Although they had not been together long, she had a good impression of Chen Qi. His performance was not like that of a slave, he worked diligently and had decent learning abilities. Moreover, he was around her age, possessing limitless potential. This is a modified version. Little Crow felt slightly conflicted. Giving a newcomer this potion seemed overly generous. Additionally, there was an unknown sea beast in his spine, who knew how long he could live. Little Crow turned her head and glanced at Chen Qi again, her eyes filled with sympathy. With this frail physique, he could not even make it back without some supplemental potions. Besides, if she did not give it to him, greedy black-eyed captain would take it sooner or later. Never mind, I'll just take a loss. After all, as his superior, as long as he remained alive, she could extract greater value from him in the future. Little Crow handed the special yellow potion to Chen Qi. "Here is your reward, take it. Remember, this is from Raven, the doctor of the Black Whale Group's Saw Shark, my modified masterpiece." "Thank you, Sister Raven. I will remember it forever." With bread in his mouth, Chen Qi took the precious yellow syringe with both hands. Phantom text appeared before his eyes once again. Yellow needle, modified, nature form, cup description, a special potion from the Fisher Zone of the Golden Flower Bird Kingdom, which significantly enhances a person's energy and endurance for 20 hours, and slightly boosts a person's self-healing ability, capability value, and poison resistance, while permanently enhancing constitution and randomly changing attributes. This potion is remixed with special deep-sea ingredients and possesses stronger effects than the original potion. Note, most permanently enhancing attribute potions do not have repeat effects. Yellow needle. What a great item. If he were not eating bread, Chen Qi would have exclaimed. It not only could enhance combat abilities but also permanently increase attributes. In early game potions for ordinary players, those that permanently increased attributes were rare, and the yellow needle was one of the best. Although it said it randomly changed attributes, data showed that the yellow needle's random attributes tended to be positive overall. This rare import cost a lot of money. If a handgun collector could buy 5 slaves like him, then the yellow needle could buy 10. 10 whole slaves. Wait, why was he becoming a unit of measurement? Chen Qi mentally joked. Little Crow made a gesture as if preparing to inject, and she gave a cold smile, a pirate's trademark. "Do you know what this is?" "I know, I heard about this potion in big cities, quite expensive." "Thank you, Sister Raven," Chen Qi said earnestly. "You know?" Little Crow's mouth curled, her smile became more sinister. He. "This is my modified product, recombined with sea beast serum, refined through numerous experiments to produce a superior potion. If I were at a medical college, I could patent this potion." Little Crow closed the medical kit, restraining her smile to maintain her superior's authority. "Good things come at a cost. If you complete the extraction of 19 cans of sea beast ingredients daily, only then will you earn the cost of this potion." "Right, my modified version takes time to take effect. Since we'll reach the fissure tomorrow morning, use it then. In the fissure, you'll need the strength provided by the potion." Arriving at the fissure tomorrow morning, Chen Qi looked at the golden potion in his hand, analyzing the current situation in his mind. Today, he spent some time understanding the status of the Saw Shark and the fissure. The Saw Shark ranked low among the Black Whale Group's ships, with about 60 crew members. Because of manpower issues, everyone had to go on the fissure exploration, including the ship's slaves, mostly used for the fissure. To prepare for emergencies, they also had 5 steam-powered mini-boats with propellers. Chapter 5 Yellow Needle 3 The steamboats were at the stern, so getting them wouldn't be hard. Everyone would participate in the crack instance, and there were also escape ships. The escape plan wasn't just a dream, but a realistic and feasible plan. However, this plan required a timing, a moment when everyone was in chaos. Seeing Chen Qi deep in thought, Little Raven thought he was scared. Not everyone was like pirates, lured by treasure and losing their reverence for life. Little Raven comforted him. "Don't worry, although the crack is dangerous, the Black Whale Group rewards crew members who participate in the major operations. This journey to the crack is one such major operation. The Black Whale Pirate Group has profound resources. If you have half a year of experience, you have a chance to get an occupation card and become a transcendent. After the journey to the crack, if you can keep working with the Saw Shark for a few more jobs to accumulate 6 months of experience, by then, I can help you apply for a Cup Phase Doctor Apprentice occupation card. If you're lucky enough, becoming a second-tier professional isn't a fantasy. Cup Phase Doctor Apprentice occupation card. Tenchi propped his chin in thought. Occupation cards came from the cracks, just like potions, and were essential items for becoming transcendent. Each occupation card had an attribute of nature form. In the setting of the New Sun world, there were 13 nature forms, representing different forces and symbols, like gold, wood, water, fire, and earth, important attributes of extraordinary power. For example, the Cup Phase of the Doctor Apprentice occupation card represented evolution, flesh, life, eternity, and other symbols. As a veteran player, Chen-Chi remembered the abilities of nearly 100 transcendent professions. The Doctor Apprentice, a first-order occupation card, could grant basic disease resistance and basic self-healing physique as 2 passive abilities, increase learning comprehension of medical knowledge, and included a basic spiritual healing technique. Little Raven, imitating the tone of the black-eyed captain, continued, whether in the Black Whale Group or elsewhere, doctors are scarce and respected positions. This crack is very important. If we can find the hunter's treasure in this mission, it will be a great achievement. If we find the treasure, I'd even say, as long as you can come out of this crack alive, even if you don't take on dangerous voyages afterward, you endure for 6 months, and you'll get the precious Doctor Apprentice occupation card. 6 months. Chen-Chi furrowed his brow and asked a question, Sister Raven, can I really survive 6 months? Little Raven's mouth instantly felt as if it was stuffed and she fell silent. Indeed, as a new pirate, how easy was it to survive 6 months in the pirate group? Not to mention the increasingly dangerous voyages of the Black Whale Pirate Group, with the kingdom's navy cracking down more severely due to its title of the Pirate Emperor. Chen-Chi already had his answer in mind. Sorry, but he had no interest in the healer profession right now. What a trash profession. If it were a peaceful era and he didn't have the deep-sea affinity talent, he might really consider becoming a ship doctor. But according to the game background, the world-destroying powers were returning, and the Black Whale Group had gone completely mad in the pursuit of ancient powers. Little Raven herself turned into a monster and died for trying to stop the Black Whale Group's massacre. If he really followed Little Raven to become a ship doctor, worked hard at medicine, and continued on this path, maybe not long after, he'd reach the ending of this world, and after working hard in the Black Whale Group, end up dying at their hands just like Little Raven. Studying medicine couldn't save the world, nor save himself. Not to mention, this transcendent profession would take a full 6 months to acquire. Staying in the Black Whale Group was not a wise choice. The atmosphere between the two became a bit subtle. Approaching the crack, neither of them was sure to survive. Night had already deepened, and Little Raven shook her head. Don't worry, you are already a member of the Black Whale Group. There won't be any problems tomorrow. Sleep early, I still have some work to do. There aren't any spare crew cabins, sleep where you are, there's a blanket by the bookshelf. Okay. Chen-Chi's eyelids drooped. After fighting the Black Bull and suffering long-term malnutrition, his whole body was extremely tired. What a brand new world, maybe not so bad. Chen-Chi lay down, covered himself with a blanket, and fatigue allowed him to momentarily forget the chaotic information in his mind. He last saw Little Raven sit at the desk before he slowly closed his eyes. His breathing gradually became steady, and he seemed to hear the sounds of pirate clamor and waves in his ears. Although there was still plenty of work left, Little Raven didn't put pen to paper for a long time. Chen-Chi's last question had pierced her thoughts like a sword, making her uneasy. She self-deprecatingly reminded herself that she was just an insignificant ship doctor on a pirate ship, a failure who couldn't get into medical school. Not to mention him, could she herself really survive for half a year? Little Raven listened to the sound of waves and slumped onto the desk. In the vast ocean waves, how many could truly control their destiny? Troubled, she slowly closed her tired eyes and fell asleep. In the gentle sound of the ocean waves, the two slept soundly, very soundly. Until a new day arrived, and the sunlight once again shone on the deck of the Saw Shark. The sound of waves crashing against the ship slowly woke Chen-Chi, and he heard the voices of pirates nearby. The footsteps on the deck grew more frequent, and the pirates' voices became more excited. The crack had arrived. Chapter 6, The Treasure of the Deep Sea Hunter. The crack is right before our eyes, the time to go ashore has come. My warriors, grab your drinks and gather on deck. On the deck, the black-eyed captain yelled with all his might, his huge voice piercing through the entire Saw Shark. Was the black-eyed captain's voice always this loud? Chen-Chi got up, glancing over the ship's infirmary in front of him. Little Crow had gotten up early and was already prepared to enter the crack. Even though she hadn't slept much, she was showing an excitement she had never exhibited before. She quickly packed up and said, "We're ready to set off. Take 2 cans of painkillers, 10 bottles of healing potion, 5 doses of tranquilizer, a bottle of sea beast oil, and bandages. In this crack, your job is to timely distribute the medicines to the wounded." "Okay." Chenchi answered excitedly. The time to go ashore was always the most exhilarating moment for pirates. And it was also a perfect opportunity for great endeavors. Without hesitation, Chenchi packed the necessary items into his backpack and strapped the gatherer's rifle to his waist. Additionally, there was a yellow syringe. This powerful potion can grant self-healing and an energy buff, and it permanently increases constitution, randomly enhancing an attribute. It was time to use it. Chenchi rolled up the sleeve of his right arm, clenched his teeth, slowly stuck the needle into his skin, and then pressed down hard. The golden liquid rushed into his bloodstream in an instant, ignited the transcendent spiritual power within his body, and then swiftly permeated his entire being. His whole body heated up. A notification screen appeared before Chenchi's eyes again. "You have injected a yellow needle improvement, gaining an energy boost buff, a gold self-healing buff, lasting approximately 24 hours. Energy boost, your stamina has greatly strengthened, temporarily gaining +3 agility, and +3 strength. Gold self-healing, during the duration, use the transcendent potion within your body to heal external injuries. Your constitution has permanently increased by 5, your strength permanently increased by 1 point." Suddenly, Chenchi felt like he had boundless energy. A 5-point increase in constitution was quite significant, similar to what some first-order transcendent professions would offer. Usually, the yellow needle often provides a boost in a major attribute at the cost of dropping another attribute. Getting a 5-point boost in constitution would typically result in a loss of 1 point in agility. Having no diminished attributes, but instead increased agility, was an incredibly lucky enhancement. Of course, this might be the improved potion's doing. Awesome. Constitution represents defense and stamina. Chenchi took a deep breath, feeling every inch of his body. Now, he no longer had to worry about being killed with a single punch by an ordinary pirate of the Black Whale group. At least it would take 2 punches. With this attribute value, even without transcendent skills, relying solely on his stats, he could take on many dangerous battles in the early stages and beat up the small monsters in the beginner's village. But unfortunately, this was on the Black Whale pirate group's ship. "How is it?" Little Crow asked curiously, as after all, this was her painstakingly improved product. "Quite good, it feels even stronger than the yellow needle I've heard about. If this syringe could be patented, it would definitely make a lot of money. Patenting isn't that easy." Little Crow adjusted her mask. Although her new assistant seemed to be praising her while also appearing somewhat naive, he always managed to hit the right spot. Little Crow picked up her medicine chest. "Let's go, stay behind me and gather on deck." The old guy with the black eyes always likes to have a drink and give a speech before entering the crack. "By the way, don't tell the captain about giving you the yellow needle. That guy has been wanting this yellow needle for a long time." "Not tell? The captain?" Chenchi showed a puzzled look. Under normal circumstances, the captain is the person with the highest strength and status. Little Crow suddenly clenched her teeth and tightened her small fists. "Yes. That guy always likes to write gold coin IOUs and then use them to take other people's things. The kind that borrows but never returns. Up to now, he already owes me 50 gold coins. 3 transcendent potion syringes. In any case, you do need to maintain the proper respect for the captain, but it's best not to trust that guy's words too much." As she spoke, Little Crow threw a few punches in the air with her right fist. Chenchi nodded slightly. From the first moment he saw the black-eyed captain, he felt like he was dealing with the boss of a ruthless company. He didn't expect that the man would even dare to cheat the ship's medic out of her money. Worthy of being a captain indeed. Chenchi followed Little Crow through the corridors and over the steps, reaching the deck. The rays of the sun hit his face. Coming to this world, it was the first time he had seen the sunlight. Chenchi raised his hand to shade part of the sunshine and looked up at the sky, unable to hide the amazement in his heart. The huge white sun burned fiercely, illuminating the world. He suddenly remembered the promotional video of the New Day era. The old sun had fallen, the new sun sustains the last of humanity's civilization, which is also why this era is called the New Day era. The brand new sunlight was quite comfortable. Chenchi shook his head and smiled again as he followed Little Crow towards the crowd. On the deck, all the pirates of the Saw Shark had assembled. The slaves on the ship were also pulled out. They formed a large circle, with those of higher status standing in front. And in the middle of the large circle was the captain of the Saw Shark, the black-eyed captain. Chenchi followed Little Crow through the crowd. The black-eyed captain was drinking from a bottle of rum, humming a pirate's song of the sea, hum hum hum. We are pirates, with a bottle in the left hand, a cutlass in the right, filling the dead man's chest with gold, filling that dead man's chest. Filling that dead man's chest. What a dark chant. Chen-Chi thought to himself, paired with the black-eyed captain's hoarse male voice, it was nearly as terrifying as the whispered chanties of sea beasts. The black-eyed captain stopped his singing as soon as he saw Little Crow. Little Crow, our best ship's doctor, you've finally arrived. Have you prepared the sea beast we need to enter the crack? Little Crow raised his head and said solemnly, my new assistant talent is pretty good, did a damn neat job, saved me a lot of work, the parasitic sea beasts we'll need are all ready. Now, cut the crap, get to the point, about the information on the crack, and our target. This isn't just a regular treasure hunting game, right, Captain? A good talent, Little Crow. It's the first time I've heard you praise an assistant. Our saw shark is exactly in need of talent at this time. The black-eyed captain's pure black eyes glanced at Chen-Chi, then suddenly he pulled out his pitch-black cutlass and bellowed, everyone, because of the instructions from above, to keep other pirate groups from screwing with our black whale group. I have not yet shared our true objective of this operation with you, which is more precious than tons of gold. Even more valuable than a transcendent occupation card. Now that the crack is right before us, it's time to reveal it. The true target. Chen-Chi felt a slight shock in his heart. Normally, the captain wouldn't hide their objective from the crew, unless it was something extremely valuable. Valuable enough to be kept a secret. The pirates looked at each other in bewilderment. The black-eyed captain seemed to have kept a big secret from them. Captain, more valuable than tons of gold, could it be Blackbeard's sunken ship? I heard that bastard Blackbeard's sunken ship contained over 10 tons of gold. Blackbeard. Captain, could you really have found the sunken ship of such a big shot? The pirates started making a ruckus all at once, each and every one of them dead set on treasure. No, no, no. The black-eyed captain shook his head, dismissing everyone's speculations. It's the ancient treasure left by someone even more famous than Blackbeard, a treasure location found by our great leader. The treasure of the deep-sea hunter. With that, the black-eyed captain slammed down his drink. A huge roar erupted from the entire ship. Deep-sea hunter. Chen-Chi swallowed hard. He was not a player who specialized in studying plots, nor was he a player from the Witch Sea region. But he still had a profound impression of the deep-sea hunter. It was the title of a legendary hunter, with the deep-sea hunter and the black whale group both being related to the main storyline of the Witch Sea region. Deep-sea hunter was incredibly powerful. In the legends of the Witch Sea region, he was the only person to have hunted a deep-sea behemoth after the witches. Unlike most legends, deep-sea hunter, corrupted by the blood of monsters he battled, had no offspring and no disciples. On the contrary, he was feared by the world. Legend had it that after his death, he divided his treasure into several parts, burying it in the hidden places of the Great Sea, leaving it for those adventurers who possessed the courage. However, the deep-sea hunter was so ancient that most pirates stopped pursuing his treasure, so ancient that people doubted its existence. The treasure of the deep-sea hunter was real. Chen-Chi was quite certain of it. He had seen it on the game forums. The treasures and weapons associated with it were top-notch divine artifacts. The treasure he left behind had sold for a terrifyingly high price on the game forums. The pirates were in complete chaos. This was without doubt earth-shattering news. Little Crow asked anxiously, Captain, is it really the treasure of the deep-sea hunter? Chen-Chi was excited but also apprehensive at the same time. As a legendary hunter, the treasure of the deep-sea hunter wouldn't be easy to obtain. Other pirates also voiced their doubts. Of course. This is the intelligence our great leader has acquired. The treasure of the deep-sea hunter is right behind us. The black-eyed captain turned around. As the saw shark slowed down, a desolate and small island gradually came into view. Atop the small island, a huge crack, like the gaping maw of a monster, emanated a dark and terrifying aura. That was their destination, the sea beast cave rift. At that moment, the black-eyed captain greedily glanced at the slaves again. On this ship, there were more than 40 slaves. He drew his cutlass and addressed the slaves. Under normal circumstances, you would be sold upon arriving at the city and then become playthings in those shameless nobles' games, with no chance of ever turning your lives around. However, now you have an opportunity, and that is to show your courage in the crack. If you show enough courage and contribute within the crack, I will grant you freedom, and furthermore, award each of you 5 gold coins. Upon hearing the black-eyed captain's words, a spark of hope lit up in the eyes of some slaves. These slaves were nothing more than cannon fodder meant for navigating through the crack, taken by the black-eyed captain. Lastly, the black-eyed captain turned towards Chen-Chi and the pirates. The treasure of the deep-sea hunter will determine the future of our black whale group. If we secure the treasure, all participants will be rewarded with 50 gold coins. In addition, based on different deeds, you will also receive the transcendent blessings bestowed personally by our leader. Transcendent powers, in this superhuman world, are closely tied to status. And 50 gold coins, that alone amounts to a significant fortune. These two rewards, let alone changing a person's destiny, could even change the fate of an entire family. Banga saw Shark stopped before the small island. At this time, the black-eyed captain turned back, his eyes filled with boundless greed. Ha 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 ha. He laughed heartily, spreading his arms wide. My friends. Enough talk. After all, glory and gold are right before our eyes. Then he leaped vigorously, stepping up to the edge of the crack. Everyone, follow me into the crack. Chapter 7 Inspiration Identification. Follow me. The little crow said. She, as the ship's doctor, often walked in the middle of a team. And as an attendant, Chen-Chi should stay close to her during this process. Chen-Chi followed the little crow to the bow, then along the rope ladder, and reached the crack on the island. On this silent island, the crack looked like a giant monster's mouth, silently waiting for everyone to walk into its trap. As the captain, the black-eyed captain held the black knife and charged into the giant mouth without hesitation. Spurred by the black-eyed captain's speech, everyone except Chen-Chi and the little crow was filled with excitement and passion. If the hunter's treasure truly existed, then this crack must hide terrifying dangers. Chen-Chi took a deep breath and reminded himself to stay vigilant. Even though the deep-sea affinity could make him immune to sea beast attacks, there were still many non-sea beast monsters in the ocean. Don't be afraid, nothing will happen. The little crow, ahead, cast a glance at the giant crack and said to Chen-Chi, then slowly walked down. Chen-Chi also carefully descended along the rugged stone wall. The surrounding vision grew darker, and the entrance became narrower and narrower, faint sounds whispered by his ears. This was not a limited number crack, nor did it have special enlightenment, it was the most ordinary crack. Chen-Chi thought. According to the setting of New Sun, many cracks would provide different information based on the level of inspiration. Some cracks would limit the number of people and have unique rules. Generally, cracks without rules were the best places to hunt monsters. As he went deeper, a hint appeared. You have entered the Sea Beast Cave. Chen-Chi looked up slightly, and a cave appeared before his eyes. The space inside the cave was exceptionally spacious, the stones on the ceiling flickered with a crystalline blue light, and the inside was filled with a salty sea breeze mixed with the stench of marine creatures. It seemed as though he could still hear the faint roars of sea beasts. Your inspiration is being identified. In the crack, if the inspiration was higher, there was a chance to obtain special enlightenment hints, and thus acquire clues to clear the crack. His initial inspiration was slightly higher, at 35, more than 3 times that of an ordinary person. Identification successful. Sea Beast Cave, crack deformation, 0%. This crack has been treated, no deformation or expansion into the world possibility. Nature form, null. This cave is already damaged and seems to have no value for exploration. Introduction. A sea beast cave, inhabited by monsters between the deep sea and the land. This is their monster nest. Inspiration enlightenment. In your inspiration, you vaguely see at the far end of this cave, under the scarlet eyes, a cyan box emitting a special aura, just like a game instance description. Chen-Chi's eyes lit up, although he had seen similar panels in many games. When they appeared in reality, it was unavoidable to feel surprised. Crack deformation 0. In New Sun setting, the initial deformation probability of cracks was around 10%, and it would decrease with each clearance until it reached 0. This meant that many powerful individuals had explored this crack on the sea. Even so, no one had obtained that box despite multiple explorations by predecessors. The box that appeared in this enlightenment was probably the deep-sea hunter's treasure mentioned by the black-eyed captain. Chen-Chi thought as he followed the large group forward. How do you feel entering the crack for the first time? How is your inspiration? Did you feel any special enlightenment? The little crow turned her head and looked at Chen-Chi, who was deep in thought. Yes. I sensed some enlightenment, and a monster's roar. Chen-Chi whispered, not hiding anything, it wasn't something that needed to be concealed. He could clearly hear more and more breaths. Moreover, these sounds were getting closer and closer to him. I can feel it. Your inspiration is quite high. The little crow was slightly surprised. Her new subordinate always managed to give her unexpected surprises. High inspiration is a good thing. If we can go back smoothly this time, I can teach you a meditation technique. This technique can further enhance your perception and even enable you to have a third eye. The little crow smiled slightly, already thinking about matters after leaving the crack in just a few steps. Please stop your jinxing behavior. In such a creepy environment, Chen-Chi felt a foreboding listening to the little ship doctor's words. Ship doctor sister, is there some kind of sound around us? Chen-Chi whispered, trying to interrupt the little crow's jinxing behavior. Don't worry, this is your first time entering a crack, you're lacking experience, This is a 0% deformation crack. Usually, the entrances of such cracks are safe, and my inspiration tells me. Wow. In an instant, before the little crow finished speaking, a bat with a head-sized body screeched loudly and charged at the two of them from the stone wall. Danger triggered the combat instinct. Chen-Chi quickly pulled out the collector and shot the bat. Bang! The bronze bullet shot out, the immense penetrating power pierced through the bat, and scarlet blood exploded in the air. It was just an ordinary monster bat, not a sea beast, and its combat power was not too strong. Chen-Chi watched the smoke rise from the gun barrel and breathed a sigh of relief. Killed a small bat, gained 7 spiritual points. Looking at the hint before him, Chen-Chi felt joy in his heart. In New Sun setting, killing monsters in cracks granted special resources called spiritual points. Essentially, it was like the experience points in typical games. Consuming spiritual points could upgrade the transcendent skills on the panel. Unfortunately, he currently did not have a transcendent occupation card, nor did he gain special transcendent skills through other means, and deep sea affinity was clearly not a skill that could be upgraded using spiritual points. Thus his spiritual points temporarily had no use. Unlike typical games, the spiritual points awarded for killing monsters in cracks were not much, and killing monsters too far above one's own level would not grant any spiritual points either. Of course, there were special circumstances. Some cracks with the blade phase tag would provide large kill bonuses. More spiritual points acquisition relied on the occupation tasks of transcendent occupation cards. For instance, a doctor's apprentice could gain spiritual points by treating patients and learning medicine, thereby upgrading their transcendent skills. However, for the current Chen-Chi, 7 points weren't bad. This gun packs a punch, truly a divine artifact for pioneers. He looked at the collector in his hand. Of course, my marksmanship isn't bad either. This was his first time using the gun in actual combat and he managed to act so swiftly and accurately. At this moment, Chen-Chi glanced at the little crow. Nicely done, just as I anticipated. The little crow smiled slightly, masking the embarrassment from her recent words about there being no danger. However, she had seen Chen-Chi defeat the Black Bull while also taking yellow needles, so his quick shooting didn't surprise her. Chen-Chi felt a bit speechless. The bat threat was not a big deal for these bloodthirsty pirates. The real terror lay ahead with this cave's master, the sea beast. They continued dispatching bats as they carefully proceeded deeper into the cave. In less than 10 minutes, the bat swarm was driven back, losing their desire to attack. Going deeper now. Chen-Chi held his gun, staying alert. But as the bat swarm retreated, more strange sounds echoed through the cave. Crash. Hiss. Chen-Chi heard these sounds by his ears and couldn't help but look around. In the darkness, he seemed to see shadowy figures. They were waiting for an opportunity. The sounds came more frequently and densely. Chen-Chi looked towards the front of the team. They were the main combat force of this expedition. At the forefront, the black-eyed captain frowned, drew his precious black knife, and shouted loudly, "Follow me, speed up, they are here already." Chapter 8, Emergency Situations. The black-eyed captain gripped his dark blade tightly, slowly sliding it across the icy ground. Chen-Chi's gaze was fixed intently on the captain in front of him. Just like with the bats from before, he couldn't be sure if they could be affected by the deep-sea affinity. As the black-eyed captain walked, he suddenly remembered something and looked back in Chen-Chi's direction. "Right, little crow, don't you have a vial of yellow needle? Do you have it with you? I feel like I'm in need of it." Bang! Chen-Chi's pupils sharply contracted. In the moment the black-eyed captain turned his head, a toad-like blue creature burst from the darkness, its mouth brimming with sharp teeth, and lunged straight for the captain's tottering hat. Damn it! The black-eyed captain twisted the blade in a reverse grip, then spun around, using the blade to forcefully block the toad's bite. Boom! Under the toad's immense power, the black-eyed captain was sent flying, rushing back tens of meters to land in front of Chen-Chi. The deep-sea toad, a colossal creature towering about 6 meters tall, had 2 boulder-like blue eyes and a gaping mouth with fangs that seemed capable of devouring everything. The moment it appeared, the entire pirate crew retreated 5 meters backwards. It gazed upon the crowd as if they were mere insects. Despite the distance of tens of meters, Chen-Chi could faintly sense that it belonged to the deep-sea category. The black-eyed captain wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and extended his hand toward Chen-Chi, who was closest. "Do you have a healing potion?" The recent impact had been huge, and the captain had sustained no small amount of internal injuries. "I do." Chen-Chi took out a bottle of healing potion from his backpack and handed it to the black-eyed captain. The black-eyed captain took the potion, gulped it down, then took a deep breath and assumed a sword-drawing stance, staring fixedly at the toad in front of him. "Damn beast." He cursed ferociously and, like a flash of lightning, he charged out, resolved to slice the deep-sea toad's mouth with his dark blade. The deep-sea toad was not to be outdone, opening its massive mouth to bite at the black-eyed captain. In the blink of an eye, they clashed. Chen-Chi observed the situation and believed the black-eyed captain had the upper hand. Beast. Die. The black-eyed captain roared in anger, his muscles bulging as he channeled all his strength into the edge of the blade. Slash. In the next moment, the blade cut through the deep-sea toad's teeth and instantly tore its body into two crimson halves. Captain, my lord. Our god. By the sea goddess above. The crowd, seeing the obstructing creature halved, let out a long sigh of relief. No, this was just the beginning. Chen-Chi muttered to himself, feeling the aura of the deep sea growing stronger. It spread like a fog, enveloping them. Damn it, as a transcendent, the black-eyed captain could also sense that frenzied aura approaching like a torrential downpour. A deep rumble resounded around the cavern. The next second, a terrifying scene unfolded. In the surrounding darkness, more and more deep-sea toads emerged, each step revealing their lethal fangs as they approached. 1, 2, 10. Over 100. Chen-Chi looked around to find that they had all been unwittingly surrounded by the deep-sea toads. At that moment, everyone's face was etched with terror. Even the mightiest among them, their captain, had exhausted all his strength to defeat just one deep-sea toad. What about them? The black-eyed captain tightened his grip on the hilt of his blade, knowing that as the captain, he must issue commands in such perilous times. There was no path of retreat for us. The only choice was to carve a bloody path through. All able-bodied fighters, follow me and clear the way. Those without the strength, stick with the doctor and cover our rear. The pirates grabbed their weapons, steam shotguns, transcendent hammers, massive blades. The battle was on the brink of erupting, and the entire cave instantly became a battleground where humans fought against monsters. The two strongest individuals on the Saw Shark, the black-eyed captain and the first mate of the Saw Shark, charged to the forefront, attempting to carve a path through. Meanwhile, some pirates and slaves were responsible for covering their rear, preventing a pincer attack. Chen-Chi hurriedly opened his backpack, taking out the necessary items in advance. Just as Little Crow had told him, he was the doctor's assistant and wasn't going to face the monsters directly. Chen-Chi pulled out a healing potion, witnessing the terrifying scene before him. The combat strength of the deep-sea toads was quite formidable, even these battle-hardened crew members often needed two people to take one down. And as for the armed slaves, they served merely as human shields and bait. Under the terrifying onslaught of the sea toads, the pirates suffered casualties in an instant. Save me, Doc. Big Sis. A crew member who had his left arm bitten off crawled over with difficulty, his arm as mangled as bloody cotton, tears of blood streaking from his eyes. Behind him, several who were succumbing to their wounds, overwhelmed by fear, crowded around as well. Little Crow adjusted her mask, displaying an unprecedentedly serious expression. Help him stop the bleeding. Okay. Chen-Chi crouched down, pressing a bandage against the bleeding wound, while feeding the man painkillers and the healing potion. In Little Crow's hands, a green light began to glow. Healing skill, a transcendent ability, consuming spiritual power, could heal a person's external injuries. However, such healing skills required some time, therefore, applying bandages and potions were essential. With their combined efforts, they quickly finished treating the injured. Unlike Earth, with the enhancement of extraordinary power, as long as the healing skill and healing potions took effect, these pirate casualties could rejoin the fight immediately. But despite this, the rate of loss was just too rapid. In just a moment, the area where the two of them were stationed was already populated with 10 injured men. And the number of wounded was still rising. Bang! A loud noise erupted from the front. At that moment, the big shot of the Saw Shark, the first mate of the Saw Shark, dragging his injured body, came in front of them. He was covered in blood, and on his right arm were deep blue veins throbbing like several venomous snakes had burrowed inside. He lay down, using every bit of his strength to say, "Save me." Deep sea toxin. Chen-Chi was startled. He had seen in the Sea Beast Medicinal Materials Collection Guide that such deep blue veins were usually a sign of poisoning from the deep-sea toad's deadly toxin. Little Crow furrowed her brows. The first mate being poisoned was undoubtedly terrible news, given that he was one of their key fighters. The deep-sea toxin possessed spiritual power and was of transcendent nature. Ordinary healing potions and skills would not suffice for treatment. Had it not been for the first mate's high constitution, he would have already burst into fragments. They would have to use a more advanced healing skill and perform surgery. This required time, and simultaneously, she couldn't afford too many disruptions. Little Crow looked at Chen-Chi. "I'm leaving the rest of the wounded to you, and if anyone tries to disturb me, stop them. I must maintain absolute focus." Little Crow took out her surgical tools along with special medicines derived by Chen-Chi from deep-sea creatures. "May the sea goddess, along with the flower witch, watch over us. Let there be no accidents during this time." Having said that, Little Crow focused intently on performing her emergency surgery. Let there be no accidents. Chen-Chi suddenly felt an ominous premonition. Their rear had already been breached, and this temporary medical post, filled with human meals, was undoubtedly the most desirable destination for the monsters. Chen-Chi tugged at a bandage, turning his head to look back. At the breached spot, a 10-meter-tall deep-sea creature that emitted an ear-piercing roar was gradually advancing towards them. Chapter 9 Cover. Staring down Chen-Chi was no ordinary deep-sea toad. By its size, as well as its distinctly grayer and harder skin, plus those deep red teeth, it was clearly a more powerful alien species. At this moment, the little crow also noticed the unusual situation with this alien species. With so many injured crew yet to recover, their current state was outright unsuitable for escape. If she was to run now, it would mean abandoning more than a dozen injured on site. Diverting a sliver of her attention, she spoke to Chen-Chi, "Take out the sea beast oil and sprinkle it on us. It has an auxiliary hypnotic effect, and can also, in front of sea beasts, mask our human scent." Auxiliary hypnotic? Your strange medicines sure are plenty. Chen-Chi took out the sea beast oil, applying it skillfully over them. Hopefully it works. The little crow prayed inwardly. Boom. Boom. The alien species advanced another 5 meters toward them, then suddenly stopped. After scattering the medicine, Chen-Chi turned back to watch the alien species' movements intently. The deep-sea toad's massive blue eyes stared at him, and Chen-Chi's eyes met its gaze. A stare-off ensued. This little thing looks quite unique. Can my deep-sea affinity take effect? Chen-Chi wondered. This deep-sea toad should be a creature of the deep-sea attribute. Roar. All of a sudden, the deep-sea toad opened its giant maw and roared in their direction. Its voice seemed to carry an ancient power, awakening everyone's instincts and fears. The roar almost stopped the injured on the ground from their hearts beating. Everyone, except for Chen-Chi, was in a state of shock. The little crow, too, was severely scared, even ready to cease the surgery at the next second. If it really came to it, she would have to let this blue toad taste the fury of a medic. However, the instant after it roared, the deep-sea toad turned around and leaped into the darkness. Everyone was baffled, but still, they exhaled in relief. Chen-Chi alone understood what had happened. Because the target of that roar was him. Guided by intuition, Chen-Chi understood the deep-sea toad's piercing cry. The rough meaning was, "You eat." The monster hadn't failed to see them, nor was it uninterested in them. But in its eyes, Chen-Chi was also a monster, and these injured were his meals. I have no interest in eating humans. Chen-Chi thought, feeling slightly elated. He was now certain that deep-sea affinity worked on these deep-sea toads. These deep-sea toads that induced fear in everyone would not attack him and even showed a certain kindness. This place was his home ground. Most pirates were busy fighting. Meaning, he could now move freely among the group of deep-sea toads. This was an excellent opportunity to escape. The only concern was the ship's medic behind him. Though she was a healer, it didn't mean her combat abilities were weak. He could very well be caught halfway by the medic, snatched back like an eagle catching a chicken. Should I really run? Chen-Chi lowered his head, calmly contemplating. With the help of deep-sea affinity, he should be able to find a better chance to escape. Moreover, the enlightenment that had sparked upon entering the crack surfaced again in Chen-Chi's mind. At the end of the cave, below those crimson eyes, there lay the deep-sea hunter's treasure. The black-eyed captain hadn't been wrong, it was indeed a rarity of this world. That was why these pirates, at the risk of their lives, set foot in the sea beast cavern. With deep-sea affinity, this treasure could be a tremendous opportunity for Chen-Chi. Under normal circumstances, it would require a long time of growth before he'd be eligible to step into this crack. Unafraid of deep-sea creatures in the crack. This deep-sea hunter's treasure, perhaps. Chen-Chi's mind conceived a bold idea, and he lifted his head. Another monster had fixed its gaze on him. At this moment, above the ceiling, a human-sized bat flapped its wings, its stark red eyes staring in the direction where Chen-Chi stood. It was larger and more menacing than the bats before. The blood-eye bat, an advanced variant of the ordinary bats, now belonged to the elite class of monsters. The scent of blood had attracted this creature of the skies. The sea beast had left due to Chen-Chi's deep-sea affinity, but this bloodthirsty monster would not. Trouble. Chen-Chi took a deep breath, preparing to slaughter this bloodthirsty bat. Fortunately, unlike the deep-sea toads, this was a very common monster in the game, and as a dedicated player, he was very familiar with it. Normally, as long as one had the strength of a first-order transcendent, they could defeat early-stage monsters like this one. Although Chen-Chi was not a first-order, he had taken the yellow needle, and also had the collector's rifle. In terms of weapons and attributes, he already tentatively possessed the strength of a first-order transcendent. Hiss. The blood-eye bat dived down. Chen-Chi did not immediately shoot, instead, He held his curved knife, quietly waiting for the right moment. In the instant it swooped down, he swung the curved knife violently, stabbing into the blood-eye bat's body. This kind of monster didn't fear pain. As the curved knife stabbed into it, just as Chen-Chi anticipated, the blood-eye bat continued to move forward, trying to bite his neck off directly. The blood-eye bat's head was its core and also the hardest part. At this moment, Chen-Chi's left hand pulled out the collector's rifle and pulled the trigger. Bang! 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 3 shots in a row. The head of the blood-eye bat burst open instantly like a water bag. Killed blood-eye bat, obtained 51 spiritual points. 51 spiritual points. This was already a considerable amount. Exhilarating. Chen-Chi felt the scalding sensation transmitted to his hand from the collector. That should be it. Chen-Chi looked around, and aside from this bat, there were no other creatures daring to compete with the deep-sea toads for food. Lying on the ground, the first mate looked at Chen-Chi, sincerely thanking him. Thank you, thanks to the sea goddess, thank you, ship's surgeon. Well done. My assistant. Crow thought to herself, she had completed the first mate's bloodletting surgery, successfully removing the deep-sea toxin from his body. Her assistant was more competent than she had imagined. With the bloodletting surgery complete, the first mate stood up, flexed his limbs, and picked up his weapon again. The black-eyed captain was still fighting at the forefront. A piece of cake. Chen-Chi clapped his hands and turned his gaze to where the black-eyed captain was. As the captain of the Saw Shark, the black-eyed captain was formidable, possessing a black blade specialized for hunting monsters. Under immense pressure, he had successfully carved a path of blood through the crowd of deep-sea toads. However, their stamina was ultimately limited, while the deep-sea toads were endless. And moreover, many more terrifying sea monsters lurked in the shadows, yet to emerge. If they didn't have a target, they would sooner or later be depleted in this cave. If this continues. Crow bit her teeth tightly, her small fists clenched. Under the dual influence of Chen-Chi and the black-eyed captain, the offensive of the deep-sea toads weakened. But the key point was that there was still no news about their target, the deep-sea hunter's treasure. And just at that moment, a pirate responsible for scouting appeared before the black-eyed captain. The scouting pirate came closer, and with a joyful face, he shared the intelligence he had just gathered with the captain. Ha ha ha. Fantastic, this is just fantastic. Upon hearing this, the frown on the black-eyed captain's forehead unfurled, and he laughed loudly. The captain's laughter was like a battle drum, igniting the emotions of everyone present. Did they discover something? Chen-Chi's eyes closely followed the captain, gripping the collector's rifle tightly. Then, the black-eyed captain, drenched in blood, pulled his long knife from the flesh of the toads and roared violently, "Crewman! The sea goddess watches over us. We've found it. The location of the deep-sea hunter's treasure. Everyone, cast aside your fears and follow me with all your might." Chapter 10, Beneath the Wall. Is this it? Chen-Chi's mouth opened slightly, a bit incredulous. After all, this was the legendary treasure. Little Crow also looked puzzled. But in the crack, the captain's words allowed no room for doubt. Moreover, they now had to run at full speed. Run. Little Crow said to Chen-Chi. This newcomer was braver than she had imagined. Under the Pathfinder's lead, Chen-Chi and the others strode across the slippery rocks and dangerous tunnels at an unprecedented pace. During this time, more and more monsters from the dark corners, seeing new food, gathered around. This was both a treasure hunt and a flight. Many collapsed due to lack of strength and were buried in the wave of monsters. Chen-Chi sprinted with all his might, his concept of time growing a bit hazy. I can't hold on any longer. Captain. Captain, how much longer? Some pirates shouted loudly, as they began to show clear signs of breathing difficulties. Chen-Chi also gasped heavily. If not for the yellow needle, his strength would have likely been depleted already. After pushing through for an indeterminate amount of time, the pace of the team finally slowed. Those at the front naturally slowed their steps. We've arrived. Chen-Chi's eyes widened as he also slowed his steps. Before them stood a massive stone door full of cracks. The traces of age on it were just like a temple buried deep within a cave, weathered by countless years. Chen-Chi looked inside and could faintly see the battered stone steps and a massive wall. Despite the large number of monsters behind them, the black-eyed captain still stopped. We've finally arrived. He smiled, then suddenly grabbed the Pathfinder's collar, staring intently into his eyes. Before entering this stone door, he needed to confirm some things. The deep-sea monsters brought fear and could cause humans to lose their sanity. And by observing the eyes, one could simply determine if the other's mind had gone astray or was controlled by some strange creature. The captain, like a fierce ghost, asked the Pathfinder, "Have you been inside? Is it safe? By the way, were you satisfied with the salary I paid you yesterday?" The Pathfinder lifted his head and snarled, "I stayed at the entrance for a while, no danger, and Captain, I didn't receive your salary yesterday. Not only that, but you also owe me 5 gold coins. This captain was quite cautious. Chen-Chi remarked. But with monsters chasing them, they probably had no choice but to step into the room beyond this stone door. They had no choice. True, I still owe you some money. The black-eyed captain grinned, set down the pathfinder, clutched the blade tightly, and stepped through the stone door. Chen-Chi followed behind Little Crow, passing through the stone door into a new cave. The stone door was massive, with a handle and the kind of bolt lock that inserts and withdraws. Upon entering, Chen-Chi immediately turned back and, together with the pirates, used his muscles to close the stone door to prevent the monsters from getting in. Bang! Bang! Just in time, right after the door closed, the monsters outside fiercely slammed against it. No time to spare, they probably won't be able to get in. Chen-Chi examined the stone door. Although there were many cracks, the material of the stone door was special and should hold for a while. But only for a while. Chen-Chi dusted his hands, feeling the warm breath of the sea beasts through the cracks. With the stone door closed, fearsome voices also erupted among the pirates. My hand is bleeding. I've made enough money, after this last bit, I'll go back to town and buy back my girl from the gang. Damn. I want to lie on Big Sister's legs, her chest. I survived, I'm still alive. A bunch of good-for-nothings, can't you be a bit braver? Look at the newcomer the ship's doctor brought, even he is braver than you. In this brief moment of safety, the panting pirates sat down and celebrated surviving. Though it was brief, it was undeniably a life-and-death escape they had just experienced. Being chased by those monsters all the way, even the pirates showed some emotional instability. Some looked toward Chen-Chi, who displayed a level of calmness that even surpassed these veterans. Little Crow glanced at Chen-Chi and said flatly, "It's okay to want to cry, to make a fuss, but wait until we are back on the ship, understand?" Understood. Chen-Chi stretched his limbs, his clothes soaked with sweat. What a thrilling long run. Unlike the pirates, he felt not fear, but a slight joy and a sense of relief after a workout. After all, those sea beasts, in his eyes, were not monsters. Don't be scared, we are safe, for now. Little Crow reassured again, shaking her head. Even she, a control of the deep sea, felt the primal fear in her body. Chen-Chi nodded, raised his head, and began to seriously observe the place before him. This place was more of an altar than a temple. Before them lay a large staircase leading upwards. Near the stairs on the ground was a very noticeable, artificially made crack. The stairs were about 20 meters high, and at the top was a massive wall. Engraved on the wall were dense, wave-like eye patterns. And beneath the wall, Chen-Chi's pupils suddenly contracted. An aged blue-green box was placed right under the wall. Undoubtedly, that was the ultimate goal of their quest, as revealed in Enlightenment. The deep-sea hunter's treasure. Everyone looked up, drawn to the blue treasure. We found it. Goddess. Treasure. Gold, wealth, blessings. At this moment, the pirates, who had endured a long voyage and life-and-death adventures, could no longer contain their excitement and shouted aloud. Little Crow also revealed a smile, her face in disbelief. It actually exists. The black-eyed captain's hand holding the blade also trembled uncontrollably. Yes, it actually exists. In fact, the black-eyed captain had kept a very important matter from everyone, that being the authenticity of his intelligence. There were many portions of the deep-sea hunter's treasure, but over time, most of what was said about this treasure was merely false rumors. According to the intelligence he received from his superiors, there were as many as 70 possible locations for the deep-sea hunter's treasure. This sea beast cave was just one possibility. And their saw shark was just an inconspicuous one among the many ships seeking the deep-sea hunter's treasure. And they were just taking their chances, gamblers all. The black-eyed captain had dragged them into this life-and-death gamble all on his own. But they had never imagined that this treasure truly existed. And that it was found by their saw shark. The deep-sea treasure atop those stairs seemed to possess an infinite magical allure, drawing in everyone present. The black-eyed captain let out a delightful sigh and walked forward a few steps in fascination. Chen-Chi was not drawn in but continued to observe the surroundings. The anomaly level of this crack was 0%, and likewise, this place was not hard to find. This meant that it was very possible others had came to this place before them but had not managed to acquire the hunter's treasure. This treasure was certainly not something one could simply take by stepping over the stairs. Chen-Chi squatted down and inspected the ground. There was a very conspicuous crack line on the ground. This line was. Chen-Chi, wearing a puzzled expression, faintly heard a wriggling sound. Looking around the walls, he could also see some small white bones. Something wasn't right. Chen-Chi gently stroked the ground. Big Sister Crow, this seems to be a warning line. We'd better not cross it. Little Crow lowered her head, only now noticing the clear line on the ground. This line appeared as if cut by a blade, strikingly conspicuous. Upon hearing Chenchi's words, everyone immediately took a few steps back. Now, everyone longed for the treasure atop the stairs, but no one dared to make a move. Boom. Boom. The sound of the sea beast pounding on the stone door came from behind them again. Caught between enemies, Chenchi remarked. Clearly, they couldn't stay in this place for much longer. The black-eyed captain gripped his blade, and as the person with the highest status in the team, it was time for him to step up. Moreover, although the Saw Shark didn't have many people, it was filled with talented individuals. Even though Chenchi hadn't paid much attention, there were quite a few talents in this team. The black-eyed captain said to a third-rate scholar in the team who had studied history, "Scholar, can you interpret the patterns on that wall?" There was also a scholar. Chenchi slightly surprised. Me? The scholar was startled, adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses, and looked carefully at the dense series of patterns on the wall, coughing twice. These patterns are clearly symbols of waves, so dense, they represent people's primal awe of the ocean. Appearing here, they must be testing our reverence for the ocean. Testing our reverence for the ocean. The black-eyed captain scratched his head, clueless about what to do. He could only give a look to the Pathfinder. "You're sure you can handle it?" Such tasks of breaking mechanisms were typically handled by this Pathfinder. The Pathfinder, looking at the crack on the ground, revealed a confident smile. "Leave it to me, I'll succeed. After all, I'm a professional." Hearing this, Chenchi suddenly furrowed his brows. The Pathfinder skillfully picked up a large stone from the ground and then threw it across the warning line. The stone slowly rolled across that crack line, and nothing happened. The Pathfinder followed the path rolled by the stone, carefully stepped over, and crossed that crack line. No ground traps. 2 seconds after crossing the warning line, the Pathfinder smiled knowingly. Boom. In the next instant of his smile, a massive tentacle, with unimaginable speed from the wall above, came down and gently slapped. Whoosh. Chenchi just heard a whizzing sound, and the Pathfinder was slapped against the wall, almost completely crushed, bleeding profusely, unable to rise again. That was it. Although he was mentally prepared, he was still shocked. This adventurous pirate was a transcendent specialized in agility and had enough caution. The speed of the attack just now was not something ordinary people could react to. In this crisis situation, there was no time to mourn the Pathfinder, and everyone simultaneously looked up. On that gigantic wall, those dense series of patterns started to move, revealing a crimson color like ink. Many of the slowly opened their eyes. At this moment, the pirates finally realized that those weren't ancient carvings of wave patterns at all, but rather closed eyes. It was awakening. As it slowly came to life, hundreds of giant crimson eyes, a wall of blood-colored tentacles, loomed far above, watching over everyone present. Chenchi unconsciously swallowed a gulp of saliva. This was what he had been prophesied. Below the crimson eyes lay the deep-sea hunter's treasure. Chapter 11. Are you saying that we should return empty-handed? The wall of blood eyes watched everyone present, its gaze seemingly piercing through flesh and bone, straight to the soul and marrow within. It was a suffocating sense of despair. Even the black-eyed captain, who was over 40 and had seen many great storms, couldn't help but retreat, and retreat again. Until the back of his head hit the stone door solidly. In an instant, everyone held their breath, not daring to make even the slightest sound. In the entire cavern, only the sound of the monster outside striking the stone door could be heard. Little Raven was extremely nervous, incessantly biting his nails. A monster beyond understanding, definitely not an opponent. The strongest among them, the black-eyed captain, gripped his blade tightly. His strength could dominate the fate of everyone present. But in just a moment, he deeply understood that his black blade could not shake this wall-like monster. The treasure of the legendary deep-sea hunter was not something these pirates could covet. The blood-eye wall of the deep sea, that was at least a world-class boss. Chenchi's first time seeing such a giant creature, he couldn't help but be shocked. A monster of this level must be at least transcendent 4th rank, a rank that only the big figures possessed, to have a chance of defeating it. But placing the treasure beneath the wall of blood eyes did fit the description of the deep-sea hunter in the legends. In the videos about the deep-sea hunter that he had come across, this deceased legendary hunter was not a man adept at mechanisms but a pure slayer, a hunter. To prove himself with blood, to break laws with force, was his style. Paired with the enlightenment he received upon entering the crack, he probably understood everything. In the distant past, the deep-sea hunter came to this crack and put one of his treasures beneath the wall. At the same time, he drew a crack on the ground with his blade, a warning line for the weak. Those who crossed this line of the crack would be attacked by the wall of blood eyes. It was both a safety line for the weak and a trial line for the strong. Everyone instinctively lowered their heads, looking at the crack carved by the blade on the ground. They seemed to traverse time and space, feeling the words of that legendary deep-sea hunter, "Want my treasure?" Then cross this line and battle with a wall of blood eyes. Kill. Charge forward. Not a single person dared to move forward. Now, they could only passively wait for the wall of blood eyes to respond. Gurgle, gurgle. Suddenly, the hundreds of eyes on the wall rolled violently, directing their gaze toward the direction of the stone door. To be exact, the direction of these gazes was toward Chen-Chi. Nearly 100 blood-red eyeballs stared fixedly. Chen-Chi lifted his head to meet their gaze. The bloodline purity of the deep sea in this wall of blood eyes was far higher than that of the deep sea toads outside. Chen-Chi didn't understand the language of the deep sea, he could only rely on instinct to understand the wall, to feel its gaze. The blood-red eyeballs continued to roll, those nearly 100 gazes conveying some kind of special ancient language. It was an extremely simple ancient meaning, hello. No, to be precise, it carried a certain humility. Should it be more accurately, greetings to you? Interesting, Chen-Chi had a hint of surprise, his lips moved slightly, without making any sound. Seeing Chen-Chi's distracted expression, Little Raven abruptly placed her hand under his armpit and gave it a fierce pinch, her grip harsh. Stop thinking. Don't try to understand it, and don't try to feel it. Although there is no research to prove it, based on the experience of the open sea, one should never try to understand the language of these ancient creatures. There are many legends of deep-sea creatures enticing humans in the vast ocean. Ow, ow, ow. That's the armpit. Chen-Chi never expected that Little Raven would suddenly do such a thing to him. Got it. But sorry, I've already understood everything. Out of politeness, Chen-Chi could only nod his head. If he didn't nod, Little Raven might pinch an even harsher spot. After conveying its meaning, the tentacles above the dome of the wall of blood eyes slowly retracted, and the multitude of eyes on the wall closed once again, returning to a wave-like pattern of carvings. The wall of blood eyes made no further movement. There was no more aggressive action, nor any psychic influences akin to a siren song. It seemed utterly unconcerned with the creatures outside of the line of the crack. The purpose of opening its eyes was not to instill fear in these creatures, but merely to greet Chen-Chi. An existence that didn't actively attack humans. After a long while, the people squeezed against the stone wall finally exhaled deeply. I was scared to death, I'd rather be swept up high by the storm. I won't go to the gang to buy back my woman anymore, I just want to be alive, even if they sell me to the gang, it's fine. The people, having narrowly escaped a catastrophe, celebrated the fact that they were still alive. Hello. Interesting. Chen-Chi muttered to himself, his thoughts abundant. He had just felt a very simple goodwill from the wall of blood eyes. He was almost certain that neither the common sea beasts outside nor this enormous monster in front of him would launch an attack on him. This was deep sea affinity. Chen-Chi also took a deep breath, feeling the strength of this innate ability once again. It was indeed a gift fit for villainous boss monsters. This treasure of the deep-sea hunter was not so difficult for him to obtain. The treasure chest on the steps might be his if he took just a few steps forward. However, with his current strength, it was impossible to act against the commands of Little Raven and the black-eyed captain. Chapter 11. Are you saying that we should return empty-handed? 2. He had to slowly find an opportunity. Chen-Chi touched his chest and looked at the crowd again. For the pirates of Sawshark at this moment, the treasure chest before them seemed as unattainable as the distant heavens. The first mate sighed and furrowed his white eyebrows. What should we do, Captain? Outside the stone door, bloodthirsty sea beasts were still trying to shatter them. There was no time to delay. But the deep-sea hunter's treasure in front of them wasn't something they could obtain easily. They needed the captain's directive. The black-eyed captain once again glanced at the crack on the ground. He pulled out a bottle of highly concentrated rum from a crew member's backpack and gulped it down. We are no match for this monster. However, in legend, the deep-sea hunter was not one known for crafting puzzles. His treasures are often placed in the dangerous areas of the ocean. And in those areas, there is usually a fierce sea beast. Our great leader of the Black Whale group had long advised us of this. In such situations, Sawshark is by no means unprepared. Oh, you're still prepared. Chen-Chi's eyes lit up. At this moment, the black-eyed captain's gaze turned to Little Crow. Little Crow, bring out those sea beasts you have brought. Little Crow bit her lip and turned to the tall pirate who was specifically responsible for carrying things. Bring them out. Yes. Bang. 4 backpacks were thrown into the center of the group. A large quantity of blue liquid flowed out from the bags. Clearly, this was Sawshark's response to the blood eye wall. Out from those backpacks, 4 twisting, wriggling things slowly emerged, sliding their tentacles on the ground. Blue, octopus-like, so this was Sawshark's preparation. Chen-Chi recognized these creatures. Aren't these parasitic sea beasts? But in terms of quality, they were far superior to the one he encountered at the beginning of his journey. At this moment, A delirious pirate said, "Captain, can these little things really defeat the Blood Eye Wall?" Little Crow, somewhat speechlessly, explained to everyone, according to the Royal University Medical Journal of the Sea Volume 11, before parasitizing humans, parasitic sea beasts secrete an invisible substance, which is extremely difficult for humans to detect, thereby creating a special scent. This scent can make other sea beasts no longer attack humans. Moreover, among the deep-sea species, especially the ancient deep-sea species, there exists a strange balance, and they rarely prey on each other. Some heretics who worship the deep-sea coexist with sea monsters precisely because of this. That is to say, if we can reduce the damage parasitic sea beasts cause to humans and let them secrete only this invisible scent, we could temporarily be seen as the same kind by the sea beasts. Of course, we still know nothing about the deep sea, this is merely speculation. After finishing in one breath, Little Crow's throat was a bit dry. At this moment, some pirates were still looking at Little Crow, blinking, unable to comprehend. Chen-Chi, as a subordinate, summed it up for Little Crow. To put it simply, by allowing the parasitic sea beasts to parasitize voluntarily, we might be seen as similar by the Blood Eye Wall, and then retrieve the treasure chest above the stairs. Little Crow continued, "Yes, but the chances of this method are low. It requires gambling with their lives." Chen-Chi added silently in his heart. Bang! Bang! The black-eyed captain loudly struck the ground with his long sword, interrupting, "Exactly. My brave warriors, by utilizing the parasitic sea beasts on the ground, we can mask our human scent. We might be able to avoid combat with the Blood Eye Wall and then take the treasure atop the stairs." Man-made deep-sea affinity. That was Saw Shark's method of dealing with the Blood Eye Wall. Little Crow, whose speech had been interrupted, clenched her fists. All four of these sea beasts had their aggression weakened. Even if parasitized, the damage to the body would not be significant. However, parasitic sea beasts are still dangerous, and only those who have a certain adaptability to sea beast parasitism can maintain a parasite time for a longer period. Otherwise, these defanged parasitic sea beasts are likely to detach from humans. Exactly, as the ship's doctor said, these sea beasts have had their aggression weakened. Very safe. The black-eyed captain, focusing on the brighter side, loudly reiterated and surveyed everyone present. "All right, my brave warriors, who dares to voluntarily place a parasitic sea beast on their shoulder and step over the crack to seize that treasure?" At that moment, the black-eyed captain fixed his gaze on a dark-skinned salvage diver. This salvage diver, having engaged in fishing and salvaging for many years, had also been infected by a special parasitic fish-like sea beast. Later, he spent a great deal of gold coin, lying in bed for a month before he came back to life. It is said that those who survive being infected by a sea beast develop some resistance to deep-sea creatures. And this salvager had developed such a resistance in his body. Undoubtedly, he was the most suitable candidate. I'll do it." The salvager was an honest and tough man. He glanced at the black-eyed captain, clenched his fists, and quietly stepped forward. He knew it was a death-seeking act. But the captain's commands were above all, not to be disobeyed, and resistance from him would be futile. At least, black-eyed captain might treat his wife and children kindly after his death. The black-eyed captain revealed a gratified smile, truly worthy of being a warrior from Saw Shark. "If we can successfully obtain the treasure and return to our base at the Black Whale Group, at that time, you, who have earned the greatest merit, will definitely receive a full chest of gold coin." Chapter 11. Are you saying that we should return empty-handed? 3. Moreover, you should know, the people who managed to obtain the treasure of the deep-sea hunter, without exception, all became famous big figures at sea. The salvager didn't speak, but silently picked up the treated parasitic sea beast and forcefully pressed it against his right arm. The parasitic sea beast, sensing the human scent, suddenly stretched out its tentacles and burrowed in. Ah! The salvager clenched his teeth and let the sea beast infiltrate his body. The breath of the deep sea, Chen-Chi could indeed feel it. As the sea beast parasitized, a faint scent of the deep sea indeed began to emanate from the salvager. Just as Little Crow had said, the aggressiveness of these four parasitic sea beasts was greatly reduced, and even ordinary people could endure it for a while. Phew. Following that, the salvager, guided by the parasitic sea beast, slowly moved forward, stepping over the terrifying line of the crack. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, he took exactly 3 steps. The wall of bloody dyes still hadn't launched an attack. Everyone's eyes widened, the wall of bloody dyes in front of them wouldn't attack him. This meant that their plan was feasible. The black-eyed captain's hand holding the black blade trembled a bit, that once unreachable treasure now seemed within reach. They didn't even need to fight the wall of bloody dyes to obtain the legendary treasure. Chen-Chi observed the salvager. He could feel that the parasitic sea beast on his shoulder had sensed something amiss and was about to break free from him. "Keep moving forward." The black-eyed captain spread his arms, encouraging him. The salvager slowly ascended the staircase, trying to quicken his pace. However, the next moment, he distinctly felt the parasitic sea beast on his shoulder beginning to detach from him. In that instant, his mind was completely covered with limitless blood-red eyes. No. I can't do this. He was struck by a wave of fear. Driven by instinct, he ignored the captain's order, quickly turned around, and then leaped towards the line of the crack. The parasitic sea beast detached from his body. Boom. The tentacles on that wall extended again and viciously lashed out. In an instant, the man's legs were turned into a bloody froth at the edge of the crack. He lay on the ground drenched in blood, struggling to crawl in their direction. Under Little Crow's guidance, Chen-Chi, as the ship's medic, stepped forward, pulled him over, then bandaged him, and administered painkillers and healing medicine. If this were Earth, at this place, with injuries of this severity, it would have been declared hopeless. But this is the New Sun world, a steampunk world with an explosively distorted tech tree. Injuries like a severed leg could be treated with extraordinary surgery if one had the money and status. Of course, normally, even nobility would have to think twice about the cost of such a surgery. But regardless, there was still a glimmer of hope. At this moment, under this bloody scene, the black-eyed captain couldn't help but curve his lips in a slight smile. Although it was a failure, the salvager's crossing of the crack line proved that his method was indeed viable. Moreover, unlike before, this time the wall of bloodied eyes didn't open its eyes after the attack. Now, they just needed to keep trying. The black-eyed captain once again surveyed all the crew members. Is there anyone else willing to undertake this mission? He pondered, aside from the salvager, who else had the resistance of a sea beast? At that moment, Little Crow subtly sensed something, silently stepped forward, delicately tiptoed to use his not-so-tall body to block the black-eyed captain's line of sight, and shielded Chen-Chi behind him. Ah! Chen-Chi was startled by this heartwarming scene, roughly grasping what it meant. Those infected by the sea beast could endure for a longer time. Wasn't that him? And he wasn't just infected, to be precise, he was in the process of being infected. For others, this was undoubtedly a suicide mission. But just now, he had confirmed that the wall of bloodied eyes wouldn't attack him. He truly was the chosen one. However, this required some acting skills. Chen-Chi looked at the crack line, contemplating. The black-eyed captain eyed everyone present, assessing each person's worth. As pirates, many had been attacked by sea beasts. But he needed to choose the most suitable person, one with the highest adaptability, and also one with the least value. All the pirates were terrified, fearing that the black-eyed captain might choose them. The black-eyed captain glanced at Little Raven, shook his head, and his gaze shifted slightly. And just then, something bizarre occurred. The parasitic sea beast on the ground twisted itself, slowly moving toward Chen-Chi. All eyes followed the direction in which the parasitic sea beast was moving. Oh no! Chen-Chi had anticipated this scene, watching the slowly creeping parasitic beast. It wasn't strange, as the parasitic sea beast was also a wild beast and would instinctively attack the weakest person. No one present was weaker than him, except the slaves. This was an opportunity. Chen-Chi's heated peripheral vision turned to the stairs above, to the deep-sea hunter's treasure. If he missed this chance, reaching this place again would be challenging. Why not take this opportunity to check out the deep-sea hunter's treasure? Deep-sea affinity was his active skill, he could turn it off, but for various reasons, he had not done so. But first, let's try turning it off. As soon as Chen-Chi thought about it, he felt as if he'd lost a layer of aura from his body. Even after turning it off, the parasitic sea beast continued moving toward Chen-Chi at an extremely slow pace. Seems like it didn't work. This little thing likes me that much, huh? Chen-Chi, speechless, turned the deep-sea affinity back on. At least this way, he wouldn't be killed by a sudden sea beast attack. Seeing this, the black-eyed captain excitedly picked up the parasitic sea beast and suddenly leaped over Little Raven, coming toward Chen-Chi. The new warrior on my ship, have you been infected by a sea beast? Chen-Chi nodded, not denying it, his back would reveal everything. The parasitic sea beast in the black-eyed captain's hand extended its tentacles, writhing a few times toward Chen-Chi. It seemed this parasitic sea beast really wanted to infect this person, which might buy some more time. The black-eyed captain said smilingly, this beast seems quite eager to devour you, but don't worry, it's been defanged. Young man, I've always thought you were very courageous. Do you have the confidence to cross that crack line? Do you have the confidence, rather than if you're willing to cross it? Chen-Chi felt somewhat emotional inside, as the other didn't even give him a chance to choose. Although he performed well, exchanging his life for a faint chance at the deep-sea hunter's treasure, to the pirates. No, to many people, this seemed worth it. It was a bloody good deal. In the end, he was just a slave who had recently become a crew member, merely cannon fodder. Leaving the Black Whale group was the right choice. Let's do it. Chen-Chi took a deep breath. And just as he did, Little Raven coldly spoke, "No. Captain, he's my subordinate and moreover, his body is too frail to reach the stairs under the parasitic influence of a sea beast. This is just a waste of manpower." The icy gaze under Little Raven's mask stared intently at the captain, as a tense atmosphere suddenly spread. Ah! Chen-Chi had never expected his immediate superior, Little Raven, to openly challenge the captain of the Sash'ark. The pirates didn't dare interject, for in terms of rank, Little Raven was just below the first mate, only behind the black-eyed captain. The black-eyed captain was silent for 3 seconds, then coldly said, "Are you suggesting we return empty-handed?" Chapter 12, The Road of Trials. Returning empty-handed is a disgrace of pirates. To some extreme pirates, this is even more unbearable than a wife's infidelity. "Are we going to return empty-handed?" the black-eyed captain asked again, his voice stern. Little Crow took a deep breath and answered, "This is not returning empty-handed. We have found out that the treasure exists. We could turn back now and share the intelligence with the deputy leader and others. With their strength, even this blood-eyed wall could be overcome. By then, the treasure of the deep-sea hunter will still belong to us, the Black Whale pirate group. After returning, the treasure will still belong to us." The corner of the black-eyed captain's eye twitched, then he chuckled and said, "How is that possible? You don't think that we are the only ones who have the intelligence on the deep-sea hunter's treasure, do you? We are merely a little ahead of them in time. The other 3 major pirate groups, even Shell Country's official navy, are all searching for the deep-sea hunter's treasure with all their might. By the time we return and reach headquarters, who knows how many ships will have came to this sea beast's lair. Then, we might not even catch a glimpse of this crack. The great age of voyaging has already arrived. The ship's doctor, you and I will make a name for ourselves amidst the waves. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in front of us. How can we give up now?" Little Crow was rendered speechless for a moment. Although she wanted to protect this capable new recruit, she could not win the argument against him. More so, his identity was that of the captain of the Sash'ark. Little Crow bit her lip and said again, "He can't make it." After the fight with the Black Bull, he cried a lot, like a rat in a filthy gutter. Such trash and cowards who can only scream for their mommies and flee in complete disarray, then run into a woman's arms, will never be able to cross the line of the crack. There are only 3 precious parasitic sea beasts left, they should be given to. After crying a lot, trash, coward. Chen-Chi was baffled. Although grateful to Little Crow for speaking up for him, it still sounded rather strange. At that moment, the black-eyed captain placed his hand on Chen-Chi's shoulder, so young, yet brave enough to overcome the Black Bull. That alone proves he is a warrior. "That's right, young man. Moreover, I remember, you killed a blood-eyed bat with a pistol, all by yourself, didn't you? With such courage, I believe you can step onto that trial stage and help us claim the deep-sea hunter's treasure." "He can't." Little Crow clenched her fist and spoke again, but her tone had become somewhat feeble. This guy's performance, both on the ship and inside the crack, was just too good. Why did he have to perform so well? Chen-Chi seemed to sense a resentful expression beneath Little Crow's mask. Despite their brief acquaintance, Chen-Chi had made quite a good impression on her. He was a rare find for her, with both talent and eloquence, a normal person. She had not expected that this new recruit would be dying after just 1 day. She knew better than anyone that being parasitized by a sea beast required not only resistance against deep-sea creatures but also exceptional physical strength. Even with the yellow needle, Chen-Chi's physical constitution was far inferior to a salvage worker's. If even a second-order transcendent salvage worker couldn't manage it, how could Chen-Chi? Not to mention his psychological fortitude. The black-eyed captain was simply sending him to his death for an almost non-existent chance. Bang! Bang! Sounds of sea beasts ramming echoed from above the stone door once again. New cracks began to appear on the stone door. No. Little Crow clenched her fist, a rage hidden behind her mask so intense she even considered punching the captain to buy some time. The black-eyed captain spoke once more. "Stop being unreasonable, Little Crow. If it really comes to it, we can simply hold a vote to decide. A choice through voting. Undoubtedly, the result would not change." Chen-Chi's eyes gleamed. Let him see just what the deep-sea hunter was hiding. "You two don't need to argue over me anymore." Chen-Chi stepped forward, interrupting them, and said, "Let me try." His ordinary voice rippled like waves, reverberating through everyone's minds. The pirates were all taken aback. They never expected that this youngster, who had just experienced the terrifying blood-eyed wall, would dare to step forward. "That's a man." A pirate, with genuine admiration, tossed him a bottle of rum. Chen-Chi caught the slightly sweet rum, drank half, and then threw the bottle onto the ground. "This is courting death." Little Crow furrowed her brow. She was merely a small ship's doctor, unable to stop what was happening. All she could do now was lament her own impotence and weakness. The black-eyed captain's heart burst with joy. He patted Chen-Chi's shoulder. "Well done, lad. If you truly get the treasure, a box of gold, no, 2 boxes. And an occupation card that leads to the transcendent path. Even a ship of your own. All yours. From now on, you'll be the pride of the Sosh Arc. Oh, and if you have a particular type of woman in mind, you can tell me that too. Even if you don't get the treasure, just for your courage, I'm willing to give you 50 gold coins in the name of the captain." The black-eyed captain's eyes were pitch black with a weirdness about them, yet at this moment, he managed to squeeze out the smile of a kind-hearted uncle. This reward is really something. Chen-Chi didn't believe in such empty promises. The black-eyed captain's kindness was merely lip service. In the captain's eyes, he was nothing more than a temporary tool, as well as a live commodity. For pirates, interests always came first. Compared to the lip service of the black-eyed captain, he was more concerned about what treasures the deep-sea hunter actually had. Chen-Chi could feel that the Black Whale pirate group was indeed not suitable for him. It was time to prepare an escape plan. But before escaping, he must figure out a way to get his hands on something good. The black-eyed captain leaned forward, already eager to place the parasitic sea creature on Chen-Chi's shoulder. "Captain, let me do it myself," Chen-Chi said. He conveniently grabbed a tentacle at the bottom of the parasitic sea creature, lifting it, and slowly moved toward the crack. Although he possessed deep-sea affinity, this was not without difficulty for him. This was a true test of his acting skills. The parasitic sea creature was large enough that if placed on the shoulder at the right angle, it wouldn't be apparent that he wasn't actually parasitized. The real key was in the acting. He needed to show the pain and struggle of being parasitized. "Good," Chen-Chi said in his heart, then placed the parasitic sea creature on his shoulder and pressed down hard. In an instant, the parasitic sea creature began to wriggle. Its slimy tentacles started to approach his arms, his armpits. Huff, Chen-Chi panicked inside. Things were not as simple as he had imagined. The parasitic sea creature was truly a forbidden being, acting beyond his expectations in an instant. The slimy tentacles kept squirming, stimulating his body's senses. The parasitic tentacles were like a clingy kitten, constantly rubbing against his body. This feeling. It was so itchy, so slimy, and somewhat comforting. To show a face of pain under such comfortable circumstances was indeed a test. This thing feels like it could be used in the massage industry. Chen-Chi forcibly showed a pained expression, encouraging himself. Then, he slowly stepped over the forbidden line drawn by the deep-sea hunter. Thud, thud, 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps. With each step he took, he could hear the excited cheers of the crowd behind him. Maybe I should run and tease them. Chen-Chi estimated the timing, taking 1 step after another forward. In just a moment, he had already surpassed the salvage worker's record. Ah! The little crow was flustered for a moment. Something wasn't quite right. With his physical condition, he shouldn't have lasted this long. Was it because of the yellow needle? Or because of the sea beast lurking inside him? When he comes back, I'll have to do a full body checkup on him, from top to bottom, inside and out. However, I'm afraid I'll never have that chance again. The little crow sighed internally. Suddenly, Chen-Chi stopped moving. Oh no! He can't hold on anymore. The black-eyed captain was shocked and immediately encouraged him. Don't be afraid, hold on. Don't give up. Think of your family, think of your unfinished ventures. Get through this, and everything will get better. There's no hurdle you can't overcome. You can always find another woman, you can always earn more money. You're still young, still a youth, with endless possibilities. Under the captain's lead, at this moment, these rough and tough pirates all turned into positive energy mentors, starting to offer encouragement. Having walked so many steps, without a doubt, Chen-Chi was their biggest hope this time. Acting in pain was truly difficult, but thankfully what he left for the crowd was only a dashing back view. Chen-Chi was somewhat speechless. He had already tried to walk as slowly as possible. That should be enough. Then, Chen-Chi firmly held the sea beast on his shoulder and suddenly accelerated, stepping over the threshold. Accelerate. This instant sent all the pirates into a frenzy of excitement. The treasure chest of the deep-sea hunter, situated upon the steps, was now just a quick shake away from him. I've made it. Chen-Chi stepped over the last step, crouched down, and first winked at the wall of bloodshot eyes. After all, this was something from beneath the lair of that old monster. I'm taking it, okay? The wall of bloodshot eyes did not respond. It was a creation of the deep sea and did not care for the treasures left behind by the deep-sea hunter. Under the baptism of time, the turquoise chest had become somewhat mottled, covered in dust, but one could still tell that the chest was exquisite and magnificent. In the tense atmosphere, Chen-Chi slowly wiped the dust off the turquoise chest with his hand and then lifted it up. This chest was welded to the ground, There were no traps around, and it wasn't a mimic. Chen-Chi observed again, noting a prominent latch on the chest. After repeatedly confirming, he gently pressed the latch. With a click, the lid of the chest slowly opened to reveal the treasures inside. Chapter 13 Hunter Yu-Hyo. Wow, a golden legend. A wave of dusty air hit him in the face. Cough, cough. No glowing items, just a lot of dust. Chen-Chi coughed twice, carefully inspecting the items inside the chest. Inside the chest were 3 items, a sheepskin scroll, a cerulean card, and a golden amber gemstone. Although there was no blinding golden light, without a doubt, these were genuine treasures. At this moment, as Chen-Chi reached the treasure chest, a loud shout came from behind him. He really did it. He actually made it to that place. Look, the parasitic sea beast is still writhing, gnawing at his body. Can he still hold on? Quick! Throw the stuff down quickly. However, right now, Chen-Chi was uninterested in those voices. He just wanted to know what exactly the deep-sea hunter's treasure was. He opened the sheepskin scroll, and at the very top, it was written, "To the adventurer who has came to this place, if you have made it to this point, then you or your group must have fought a bloody battle with the deep-sea monsters of the ocean. After my death, the great whale will inevitably traverse the white mist of the setting sun, returning to this world. And in this ocean, there must be hunters to slay them. To the adventurers who battled against the wall of blood eyes, please accept this lone hunter's gift, celebrating your fight between life and death." Chen-Chi looked down at his fairly clean clothes and the sea beast massaging his shoulder. The massage strength and frequency by this parasitic sea beast were quite good. Massages can unblock meridians and promote blood circulation. He indeed considered it a bloody battle experience. Next, Chen-Chi briefly skimmed the subsequent content. The rest comprised location descriptions. Left of the Moonstone City Bell Tower. Under the triangular whirlpool. All locations. This was a treasure map. The deep-sea hunter's treasure actually included a map recording all treasure locations. Chen-Chi tried to memorize these locations as best as he could. However, judging by the content, the deep-sea hunter mostly buried treasure in a typical manner, placing it near a dangerous sea beast. Most supposed deep-sea hunter treasures were merely rumors. A map of the deep-sea hunter's treasures was among the most legendary in the entire ocean. If the Black Whale pirate group behind him knew about it, they would probably jump with excitement. What a valuable thing. Chen-Chi memorized some locations before closing the sheepskin scroll and shifting his gaze to the cerulean card. This card should be a skill card. In the cracks, apart from cards closely related to transcendent occupations, the most common cards were skill cards. As long as conditions were met, a skill card could directly grant a transcendent a skill. This card depicted an abstract oil painting of a fisherman sitting calmly on a small boat in a dark gray storm, fishing with ease. The moment he held the skill card, a prompt appeared. Skill card, stormy fishing, learning requirements, none effect. This card contains knowledge of transcendent fishing. Even in a storm, you can still catch a big fish. Description: are you troubled by the lack of fish when fishing? In the Witch Sea area, sea fishing indeed was a decent skill, but considering this was a deep-sea hunter's treasure, even transcendent fishing seemed unworthy. Chen-Chi bit his lip. One last thing left. Chen-Chi reached out and gently picked up the golden amber gemstone. Its color was not bright, even somewhat dull, but within it, faintly visible flames burned. The faintly burning flames gave a feeling of warmth and tranquility, as if carrying infinite power. An eye-catching prompt appeared. Yu-Hyo the Hunter. Description: the remaining fire obtained by the hunter in the sunken lighthouse, imbued with transcendent power. Nature form: light, blade effect, light of Yu-Hyo, slightly increases the strength of your 1st to 4th tier transcendent occupations. Hunter's will: Yu-Hyo contains a lifetime of battle knowledge of the deep-sea hunter, dramatically enhancing your combat learning speed. Note: we are hunters, they are the prey. May you inherit the will of the hunter, slaying the deep-sea monsters of this world. Within the amber, it seemed one could see a hunter wrestling with a great whale in a storm, his eyes ablaze with fire like madness, giving off a terrifying yet reassuring feeling. Just by looking at it, an intense sense of mystery engulfed him. Yu-Hyo. Chen-Chi's heart skipped a beat. As someone who had traded many rare items, he knew its value. Such an item usually only appeared in narrative texts. In player forums, several major events storylines revolved around competing for Yu-Hyo. The first ability, although only a slight enhancement, considering it neither as equipment nor an occupation card, but as an indiscriminate boost to transcendent occupation score, its value was enormous. After all, even an old monster with top-tier gear could significantly enhance its strength with this item. For pioneers, a slight enhancement from an occupation card was already immensely helpful. Not to mention the hunter's will, many second-tier occupation bonuses only slightly enhanced learning speed. dramatically increasing combat learning speed while containing a legendary hunter's knowledge. This item could be considered a zero-tier occupation card, a zero-tier occupation card named Hunter. An absolute treasure. This was what belonged in the Deep-Sea Hunter treasure box. Just by touching it, Chen-Chi could vaguely feel the Deep-Sea Hunter's desire to hunt monsters. Taking this item meant, in a sense, inheriting the hunter's will. However, with his deep-sea affinity talent, Chen-Chi's chances of fighting deep-sea monsters were relatively low. After all, his aura seemed stronger than even the Wall of Blood Eyes. If the deep-sea hunter had any spirit, they'd probably kill this aberrant with a single strike. Rest in peace. I will inherit the power within. Hunting humans could also count as hunting, right? Chen-Chi stowed his smile, adjusted his viewpoint, and put everything away. All 3 items were small enough to fit in his large pockets, even the sheepskin scroll. In a short while, the voices behind him grew louder. Can you still stand? Hey, hey, hey. Has he already been completely taken over by the parasitic sea beast? Captain, the cracks in the stone gate behind us are widening, the monsters are about to break through. At this moment, everyone speculated that Chen-Chi had been completely parasitized, becoming a slave to the sea beast. After all, the sea beast on his shoulder seemed increasingly excited. You're pirates, stay calm. Haven't you seen big waves before? Chen-Chi stood up, turned, and looked at the anxious members of the saw shark below the stairs. Seeing this, black-eyed Captain stretched his neck and bellowed in his loud voice, can you hold on? If not, throw down the items from the chest first. At least put on a show to ensure my safety first. Chen-Chi remained silent, looking quietly at everything below. Black-eyed Captain didn't care about his life, only the items in the chest. His pitch-black eyes revealed a pirate's fervor, the kind that could kill everyone for treasure. Would he descend and hand this precious treasure to the Black Whale pirate group? Though Chen-Chi had long prepared to escape, he still questioned himself again. He remembered the black-eyed captain's promise, 2 chests of gold, if he descended and handed over these items. Would the captain really keep his word then? No, without a doubt, the reward would probably be less than 1% of the treasure's value. As a constituent under the Black Whale group, which was unlike other free pirate groups, they strictly managed their members. If he performed too outstandingly, he would undoubtedly be closely watched. The only good thing in the Black Whale group was having a reliable mentor, Black Crow. Although Black Crow treated him well, given her undercover status, she might not survive the storm. Moreover, his body lacked wounds from the parasitic sea beast, meaning his deep-sea affinity could be exposed. His body risked dissection. He had no choice, his body was too enticing. Escaping was the correct choice, the only choice. Surviving, inheriting the hunter's will, and embarking on a path of strength as a hunter was what he should do. Chen-Chi pondered. He was in his unique safe zone, under the Wall of Blood Eyes. Outside, deep-sea monsters slammed against the stone wall, and the saw shark was about to plunge into chaos. Now was the best time. Chen-Chi sorted out his cluttered thoughts and exhaled deeply. Next, he looked at the black knife at black-eyed captain's waist, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Chapter 14 Black Sword. The stone door behind them had already been punched through by the monsters, and they couldn't wait to enjoy a feast of human flesh. The pirates lifted their heads and all looked at Chen-Chi. The parasitic sea beast on his shoulder was moving more and more violently. Chen-Chi's gaze landed on the black knife at the black-eyed captain's waist. The black knife, forged by ancient smiths, was a rather powerful weapon. Perhaps he could borrow this black knife. But this might require a bit of acting. Can you calm down? In this most dangerous moment, the black-eyed captain shouted loudly, trying to awaken Chen-Chi's consciousness. Chen-Chi lowered his head slightly and said painfully, Captain. I see. Blood-red eyes, they keep closing in on me. It's coming. Wasn't this a bit too exaggerated? He clenched his teeth tightly, attempting to show a look of excruciating pain. Blood-red eyes emerged. The little raven saw this scene and instantly understood everything, saying with professional knowledge, the parasitic sea beast releases a trace of toxin into the bloodstream while emitting an extraordinary sound similar to that of a sea demon. Under such circumstances, severe hallucinations occur. His spirit has finally collapsed. The little raven shook her head. Previously, when Chen-Chi managed to walk up the stairs smoothly, she already felt it was abnormal. This did not fit his constitution at all. Now that hallucinations had appeared, this was the behavior expected of an ordinary person after being parasitized by a sea beast. Hallucination? The black-eyed captain shouted, clearly only a step away. Clearly the sea beast had not left him. And now, the guy was hallucinating. Yes, this is a normal behavior. For example, the common skin crawler can make humans turn on each other and kill each other. The little raven adjusted her mask. The black-eyed captain's heart felt like it was being minced. The guy must be fighting fiercely with the parasitic sea beast now, struggling for control of his body. It might work. Chen-Chi took 2 steps back. No. The blood-red eyes have grown hands. It's getting closer again. It's going to attack me. I need a weapon. Captain, your knife, lend it to me. Only a slash with a black blade can kill this monster. He clenched his left hand into a fist and swung it twice into the air. Still too exaggerated, and the voice was a bit low. Thought Chen-Chi to himself, feeling his acting was indeed not very good. Even his voice has become weak, indeed, physical strength has reached its limit. The little raven, seeing this, shook her head helplessly. Physical strength at its limit. The black-eyed captain, hearing the ship doctor's words, became extremely anxious. The black knife at his waist was a treasure he got from the belly of a giant angular fish, his most precious possession. He would perfume the knife every week. The black-eyed captain softly told the crew behind him, "Give me a better quality curved knife." However, in the next second, he suddenly interrupted himself. His black knife was very special, completely different from the curved knives commonly used by his crew. Not much time left. The black-eyed captain took his black knife in hand, humming softly to himself, "Fill the dead man's box with gold." He was a gambler, a 99% chance to get 1 gold coin, and a 1% chance to get 50 gold coins. He would unhesitatingly choose the latter. If he could get the treasure of the deep-sea hunter, then losing a black knife was nothing at all. As a pirate, he had to pursue bigger treasures and bigger possibilities. Only by doing so could he ride atop the waves, ungoverned by anyone. Amidst the roars of sea beasts outside, the black-eyed captain slowly tossed the black knife upward. He didn't throw it too fast, afraid of alarming the blood-eyed wall behind Chen-Chi. Bang! Chen-Chi caught the black-eyed captain's black knife with his right hand. Black knife, nature phase, blade. This knife is born for combat. Description: this knife has extremely high durability, and the blade has a special black blade aura. On hitting an enemy, it causes considerable black aura damage. This black aura induces fear. Description: slash its flesh, grant its fear. The blade seemed to be covered in layers of black dust, but it gave a feeling of extreme sharpness, capable of tearing flesh apart. This weapon already involved transcendent power, typically requiring third-order transcendent strength to wield it. This weapon was quite famous, worthy of being called a small divine artifact. Seeing the other party get the weapon, the black-eyed captain's tone sped up in encouragement. "How is it? Can you manage it? Can you defeat the blood-red eyes and came to us? I'll give it a try." These blood-red eyes aren't easy to deal with. Chen-Chi grasped the hilt and tried swinging it a few times. It felt very handy, truly the captain's knife. But at this moment, a huge sound rang out again. Boom. Boom. The stone door behind them collided heavier and heavier. A significant crack appeared on the door. The black-eyed captain's forehead was already covered in fine beads of sweat. "How is it? Have you killed the blood-red eyes? Come down quickly. Come to a safe place, come to us, we will protect you." Chen-Chi nodded seriously. "Why aren't you moving?" The black-eyed captain felt his heartbeat getting faster and faster. His nod didn't mean he would come down. The black-eyed captain asked, trying to stay calm, "What's wrong?" "Captain. In front of me, another treasure chest has appeared." It opened its mouth. "If there are no gold coins, it will eat me. If only there were more gold coins. I need gold coins." A mimic. At this moment, the black-eyed captain felt his heart pounding, causing him to tremble all over. Why did the hallucination have a follow-up? Isn't it just creating empty promises? I can do that too. Chen-Chi smiled inwardly. If he continued, he could promise the black-eyed captain several more ifs. "Come on, Captain, as long as you try harder, I'll definitely come down." But unfortunately, the time was up. Boom. No time for the black-eyed captain to think, a deep-sea toad suddenly smashed, and the stone door was shattered with a crash. Nearly 100 deep-sea monsters rushed in, with blood-stained mouths wide open, ready to enjoy a delicious feast. Chen-Chi looked at the monsters below him. Next, it was about waiting for a moment, and then escaping amidst the chaos. The black-eyed captain's face was ashen, his eyes fixed tightly on the blue treasure chest of the deep-sea hunter on the steps above. In this short time, he felt hope and despair. The monster's howls from behind pierced through the captain's spine. Chen-Chi waited silently. However, in the next instant, something unexpected happened. The black-eyed captain suddenly grabbed the curved knife behind him, then rushed straight ahead, crossing the dangerous crack line. He couldn't give up the deep-sea hunter's treasure so easily. Dare to cross that line. Chen-Chi was a bit shocked. The moment the black-eyed captain stepped over the crack line, tentacles struck down from the wall, impacting like a giant python. The black-eyed captain should have specialized in combat as a third-rank blade phase transcendent. Chen-Chi found it difficult to capture his burst speed at that moment. Clang. Clang. He quickly placed the curved knife in front of him, instantly slashing twice to block the giant tentacles. At this moment, the tentacles of the blood-eyed wall curved and retracted slightly. Praiseworthy courage, but that was all. Kenshi sighed. The next moment, the black-eyed captain's curved knife shattered, and he was forced away from the crack line by the tentacle's impact. Accompanied by the last attempt, a feeling of despair surged back in. The disheveled black-eyed captain raised his head, staring blankly at the steps above. He seemed to see Kenshi being torn apart by the waves of sea beasts, and the treasure in that blue chest would forever be lost within the corpses, never to be obtained. So close, so close. Kenshi had given him hope, yet in the end, he had also bestowed upon him despair. Now, he had to turn around and face the sea beasts behind him. Everyone, form a defensive circle. Prepare to break out with full force. With a loud bang, the stone door behind him suddenly shattered, and the sea beasts with blood-stained mouths charged in, ready to feast. The black-eyed captain mustered all his strength, roaring, "We are preparing to set sail." "Aye, Captain." The pirates of the Saw Shark immediately formed ranks, shifting their focus from the treasure to battle the sea beasts behind them. Gold coins, gold coins. This amount of money wasn't enough. Why am I so poor? The slow-reacting little raven was still rummaging in her waist pouch, trying to find some gold coins to help Kenshi solve the mimic in his hallucination. Suddenly, she paused, her trembling hand slowly stopped, accepting the harsh reality. Alas, another recruit has died. She raised her head sadly, ready to take one last look at this interesting and capable new recruit. At the top of the steps, because of the sea beast's commotion, the wall with blood-red eyes opened once again. Beneath the red glow of the scarlet eyes, Kenshi stood calmly, as if he had accepted his fate. "Goodbye." Suddenly, the little raven shivered all over. In the end, Kenshi smiled at her. It seemed like he said something. At that moment, she felt a strange sensation. This recruit seemed not desperate or afraid, but extraordinarily calm, so calm that he merged with the blood-eyed wall. Even more, he seemed even more inscrutable than the blood-eyed wall itself. Boom. A tentacle charged at her. Due to the sea beasts, she had to engage in battle. Why? The little raven shook her head, taking a syringe and stabbing herself, turning around. As a medic, she now had to show her true skills. Set sail. Go home. Go home. Amidst the shouts, the pirates of the Saw Shark drew their weapons, fighting with all their might against the sea beasts. In an instant, the blood of sea beasts and pirates mixed, splattering in this treasure cave. They fought with all their strength, swearing to carve out a path home. As the little raven and the black-eyed captain, blood-stained, prepared to leave the cave, glancing back one more time, their pupils involuntarily constricted, their minds trembling. On the steps above, only a resealed treasure chest remained. No painful wails, no corpse, no fresh blood. The man beneath the scarlet eyes was gone entirely, as if he had never existed. Chapter 15 Set sail. If fate allows, then let's meet again upon the vast sea. Kenshi packed his things and left the stone gate early while the crew was fighting the sea beasts. The black-eyed captain and the little crow both held back some of their strength, and they probably had some combat supplies left as well. As long as they didn't touch that bloody eye wall, the Saw Shark probably wouldn't suffer serious casualties. With the little crow's skill level, he should be fine. Kenshi thought to himself. Although their time together was short, his impression of the little crow was quite good. The other party was not a witch or a princess, yet she became a hit character in the Witch C block, which was not without reason. Although sometimes she would display a sinister laugh, he, and had a bit of a violent streak, she indeed was a good person and had given him quite a bit. If there was a chance in the future, maybe they could collaborate again. But on this vast sea, without strength, you can't accomplish anything. Along the way, he encountered only sea beasts, and none deliberately made it difficult for him. Some sea beasts even brought him some disgusting bat corpses, fearing he might starve. They were all very friendly, even giving Kenshi a feeling of returning home. But I'm a human after all, and I can't eat these things. Kenshi looked at these sea beasts. Although he possessed a deep-sea affinity, there was no doubt that, both in appearance and mentality, he was a bona fide human. After getting out, I need to advance to a transcendent as quickly as possible. The exit of the crack appeared before his eyes. Kenshi put down the parasitic sea beast that had been massaging his shoulder. The massage was comfortable, but it was also time to say goodbye. Goodbye, quaint little thing. Kenshi hastened his pace and left the crack. Although the chance of being caught up was very low, it would be troublesome if someone was fast enough. Before long, Kenshi passed through the narrow, dark passage and came out of the crack. The sunlight shone on him once again. The azure sky and the sparkling sea surface complemented each other, and the Black Whale Group's steam sailboat, the Saw Shark, was right in front of him. The sunlight was really dazzling. It must be close to noon by now. Chen-Chi covered part of the sunlight with his hand. After getting used to the light, he walked toward the Saw Shark. Based on the information he had gathered, for the sake of maximizing combat capability, all the members of the Saw Shark had entered the crack. After all, even if people stayed on the ship, they couldn't relay any unexpected situations into the crack. This was only information from others, not necessarily accurate. But even if there were people left behind, their strength shouldn't be too strong. Chen-Chi climbed up the rope ladder and arrived on the deck of the Saw Shark, carefully looking around. As expected, he saw two people with their arms bandaged inside the ship's sick bay. It was someone whose arms had been bitten by sharks, and since he was almost frontline capable, he didn't go into the crack. The person lay on the deck, sunbathing, sleeping very soundly. He wouldn't interfere with Chen-Chi's escape. Chen-Chi first went to the dining room, took the sea chart used for decoration off the wall, picked up a bag of bread and 2 cans, and during the process, he was lucky to get his hands on a simple compass. The entire process was performed with great dexterity. After taking the food, he made his way to the stern of the ship. At the stern, 5 steam dinghies meant for emergencies were suspended. The steam dinghies weren't large, but their structure was clever and delicate, with a characteristic steampunk style. Their front end was equipped with a small steam engine, and 3 propellers were installed at the bottom. At the bow was a simple steering wheel, and by adjusting the angle of the wheel, it ensured safe passage through complex sea conditions. On the bow was also a simple lantern. On the side of the ship, in dark gold letters, the name Black Spiral Propeller Sea Industry Company was written. It seemed like a legitimate brand and must have been quite expensive. Hopefully, it wasn't some rubbish cobbled together from counterfeit parts. Chen-Chi clapped his hands. He had already seen the vast ocean and his freedom lay before him. Now, there was just one little problem troubling him. How do I get this boat down? Chen-Chi looked at the hoisting mechanisms that secured the boat and fell into thought. It seemed like it required a key, but he should be able to force it off violently. He picked up the captain's black blade, aimed at the connection, and stabbed forcefully. Strength worked wonders. Whoosh! The steam dinghy fell onto the water with a bang. Worthy of the captain's blade, it was indeed handy. Almost ready, set sail. Chen-Chi took another look around. Suddenly, he spotted something conspicuous dangling below. A finely crafted steel fishing rod. On the handle of the fishing rod, there were also delicate golden patterns. Pirates usually keep valuable things on their person, or hidden in strange objects. And this item, judging from the patterns, seemed quite valuable. It looked like a branded item, but he didn't know whose it was. Never mind, he took it. Chen-Chi tossed the fishing rod and his backpack onto the boat, then spent 5 seconds studying the small boat. This must be the engine's ignition device, like this, it should start now. Chen-Chi jumped onto the small boat, looking out at the boundless sea before him. As the moment to embark approached, the sea breeze blew over, freeing his train of thought. Suddenly, he remembered the anime he watched as a child, about a young boy who aspired to become king of the pirates, setting sail from a small town. This must be his first time at sea. Going out to sea is always exciting. Alone in a small boat, he was stepping into the new world after the apocalypse. But without a good ship, the real voyage would likely be much more arduous. Not to mention the dangers lurking in these waters. The sea breeze gently brushed his black hair as Chen-Chi looked out to sea, smiling wryly. At that moment, he suddenly recalled the promotional video for the game Descent. Descent, as a massive open-world game, was divided into 6 major sections, with 6 countries as borders. As the flames of the day gradually waned, centuries of peace were shattered, and blood and fire rekindled the land. Above the Witch Sea, beneath the deep sea, witches revived, and great whales brought the tides, sweeping across the borders. In such a world, the weak are monsters' fodder, and only powerful transcendents have a chance to grasp their own fate. Before crossing over, his main account was a 4th-rank pet beast trainer from the Golden Flower Bird Kingdom sector, aiming to become a master beast trainer. Moreover, as Descent was a beta game, the world storyline hadn't developed much. His knowledge of the Witch Sea sector wasn't extensive. However, for every player, Descent was filled with vast unknowns and dangers. Even high and mighty nobles fell because of these unknowns, which is what made it captivating. The keywords of the Witch Sea sector floated into Chen-Chi's mind. The sea, crack tide, flesh implants, wealth, treasures, steampunk technology, monsters. These were the underlying themes of the Kingdom of Shell and the Witch Sea sector. And the crack tide and the flower witch were preludes to the main storyline of the Witch Sea. According to his guess, now was just the eve of the story. Even the crack tide might not have arrived yet. After the Descent, the Witch Sea would get lively. But by then, survival skills would be even more essential. Need to get stronger quickly, to advance to a transcendent. As Chen-Chi pondered, He started the steamboat's engine. Now, he couldn't treat this world merely as a game. He wasn't a player who could be resurrected after death, but rather someone constantly facing the danger of death. This was a real world, one he had to take seriously. Having crossed into another world, he had to make the best of his life. Looking at the waves, Chen Qi's thoughts were complex and hard to describe. In this world, you either rot in the sea or become a legend, one that could topple the entire world. In a hazy vision, he seemed to see himself after setting out to sea, amidst a massive storm, with monsters surging over the sea towards him like a raging tide. A high inspiration, huh? Chen Qi chuckled to himself. No matter what, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. With the roar of the propeller and engine, the small boat sailed toward the open sea. Embarking on a voyage. Chapter 16 The storm approaches. On a small island within the crack of the sea beast cave, the first mate of the saw shark forcefully pressed their captain's head into the seawater with his bulky hands. Gurgle, gurgle. This was usually a method of interrogation, but it was also the quickest way to calm down those who had gone mad. Now, their captain needed to be calmed down. The first mate pressed the captain's head into the seawater for a full minute before releasing him. Calm now. The black-eyed captain's head popped out of the water and he immediately said, no. That black blade is my beloved, I can't be without. Gurgle, gurgle. Before he could finish, the first mate fiercely pushed the black-eyed captain's head back into the water. A blade can always be found again. The first mate displayed an indifferent expression. It wasn't his knife after all. If he wasn't sober yet, then it was time for another dunk in the seawater. It was at this time, having finished checking the situation on the ship and dealing with the wounded, that little raven came before the two men. One of the saw shark's emergency boats is missing, he might have taken it and escaped. The first mate blinked, asking in a slightly puzzled whisper, are you saying he really left the sea beast cave before us, boarded our ship and then took off with it? Yes, though I find it hard to believe, that's the situation at the moment. How did he manage to do that? The first mate looked utterly bewildered. It's not impossible. Little Raven nudged her mask, looking like she had already grasped the entire picture of the event. While cases are extremely rare, certain special types of parasitic sea beasts can achieve long-term parasitism in humans, and some have even established perfect symbiotic relationships. Have you heard of skinwalkers? These belong to a more advanced type of parasitic sea beasts that can mimic humans for up to a month. Although the parasitic sea beast used on him was not of this kind, we cannot dismiss the possibility of mutations. After parasitism, his speed and strength increased rather than diminished, and the parasitic sea beast gave him a partial sea beast scent. Hence, his chance of escaping in the illusion was real. This was the knowledge of a deep-sea researcher. Little Raven hooked the corner of her mouth with a scholar's pride. The first mate sighed, a mutated sea beast, which means he really escaped with the deep-sea hunter's treasure. Treasure. At that moment, upon hearing these words, the black-eyed captain again lifted his head from the water. Pursue. Set sail now. We must catch him. He has my treasure. Gurgle. Gurgle. Before he could finish, he was once again pushed under by the first mate. Pursue what? With everyone so badly injured, we need to rest and recover. Besides, in this vast sea and after so much time, we have no idea which direction he went. He might have been infected by the sea beast and already gone into the sea. Finding someone on the open sea was harder than one could imagine. Moreover, in the legends, those parasitized by sea beasts eventually stepped into the sea and forever became part of it. In other words, that parasitic sea beast might have caused Chen Qi to cast himself into the sea. The first mate truly did not believe Chen Qi was still alive. Sea beasts turn to water. If he couldn't rid himself of the parasitic sea beast's infection, then plunging into the sea would be his only outcome. But if he did escape, then he must be gravely injured. Little Raven shook her head. Rationality told her that Chen Qi wouldn't have a very good outcome. But her emotions still believed that Chen Qi was still alive. No. No. He won't die. At that moment, the black-eyed captain suddenly lifted his head fiercely, both his emotions and logic convinced that Chen Qi was alive. He roared loudly, that man is extraordinary, I believe in him. He has inherited the will of my black blade, he's sure to survive. Humphrey, talking about inheriting wills now, are you two that close? Wasn't it you who foolishly gave him the knife? Little Raven's mouth curled up, mercilessly mocking, having completely forgotten the promise to find gold coin to help Chen Qi with the treasure chest monster. At last, the captain, who always broke his promises, was getting his just desserts. Done for, Captain, have you lost your mind? The first mate shook his head and pressed hard, submerging the captain's head back into the water. The treasure they had finally laid eyes on had vanished into thin air, sending the captain into a troubled state of mind. The first mate spoke to the black-eyed captain earnestly, Captain, you need to look at the problem from a different angle. Don't focus on the fact that he's escaped, but rather that the deep-sea hunter's treasure has emerged from underneath the blood eye wall of the sea beast cave. Imagine that treasure chest has grown legs and made it to a safe place. Do you remember the days we caught Mandrake? You can think of him as a mandrake. The black-eyed captain calmed down a bit in the water, then raised his head to speak. Yeah. Even if he has run off, this treasure is far easier to get than the chest behind the wall of blood eyes. Isn't this just like getting a new treasure map? The only worry is that once the news gets out, those above will sooner or later come looking for us, and then my treasure. Deluding oneself. Little Raven looked at these two people with utter speechlessness. Way too naive. They completely overlooked the possibility that Chen Qi might sell the treasure or be forced to hand it over to other pirates who had their eyes on him. The first mate spoke again. Now, are you calm, Captain? The black-eyed captain nodded. Calm down. As long as we keep the news within our Black Whale group, this treasure will sooner or later be mine. No. It will be ours, the Sharks. On second thought, I should really thank him. Thank him for finding us a new treasure map. Seeing the black-eyed captain deluding himself, Little Raven said, By the way, Captain, I have some good news and some bad news that I forgot to tell you. Which one do you want to hear first? The black-eyed captain shook the seawater from his head, his hair fluttering softly. The good news. According to our information, he grabbed some food from the restaurant before he ran away. If he were completely controlled by the sea beast, he wouldn't have done that. This indicates that he isn't completely under the sea beast's control and there's a possibility he might survive. A chance of survival. You see, if they want to find the treasure again, the whole premise is based on Chen Qi being alive. Good news. The black-eyed captain's mood brightened as he flashed his shiny gold tooth. I believe in him too, he won't die so easily. Now, what's the bad news? Little Raven snapped her fingers. Besides the food that was taken from the restaurant, another piece of evidence that he was somewhat lucid is. You made up an excuse to delay this month's wages for 10 sailors, and even added your own money to buy that limited edition fishing rod. That's gone too. The sea beast wouldn't take a fishing rod, which shows that he was indeed somewhat lucid. My fishing rod. That was a high-end brand. I even used it to catch a 20-pound fish last time. The black-eyed captain immediately felt his blood rush to his throat, wanting to find his knife and cut somebody. My knife, where is my knife? My blood is about to burst through my head. Gurgle, gurgle. The first mate reacted quickly and dunked the captain's head in the water again. Cool off some more. Comma ha 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 ha. Little Raven struggled to cover her mouth and maintain the composure befitting her role as the ship's doctor. Nicely done, my assistant. She slowly turned around, stepping lightly toward the rocky shores by the sea. The waves washed over her boots, and the sea breeze played with her hair. Little Raven stood on a rock, her jet black hair gently swaying with the wind. She gazed blankly in the direction of the stern. In the haze, she seemed to see Chen Qi dragging his feeble body, controlled by the parasitic sea beast, struggling to get into the ship's boat, and then embracing the sea, embracing freedom. What a day full of events. She never thought that someone could leave such a deep impression on her in just one day. How nice. She slightly lifted the raven mask stained with the blood of the sea beast, revealing her cute little face with a small scar. Without this mask, her face just couldn't command respect from others. As a child, Little Raven had fantasized about having a fierce face, but after trying a few things, she found the mask to be the most reliable. As a ship's doctor and an undercover agent for 3+3 years, Little Raven didn't care much about the treasures of the deep-sea hunter. After all, it was unlikely such treasures would fall into her hands. At most it would get her 2 or 3 gold coins. Therefore, she felt a faint joy and a hint of longing, a yearning for Chen Qi's escape. It's rare to see someone who can sail freely on the open sea. However, although their steamboat was of decent quality, the most important thing for a successful landing was still the weather. May the sea goddess look favorably upon us and keep the weather on the ocean calm. Little Raven prayed, feeling the sea breeze. At the moment she finished praying, a raindrop the size of a bin fell onto her eyeball. Ouch! Why? According to the navigator's report, it was supposed to be clear skies today. She looked up. A storm seemed to be coming. And it didn't look like any simple storm. Chapter 17, Crack tide. The wind was getting stronger, and the sky was gradually becoming overcast. Chen Qi lay alone on the small boat, staring blankly at the sky. There are 2 most exciting moments in sailing, one is when you set out to sea, the other is when you return home. He had just been thinking about the first-order transcendent profession of the witch sea, but in an instant, he felt an ominous premonition. The wind was howling. Chen Qi decisively sat up on the boat, looking out at the vast sea before him. There wasn't a hint of human presence, only occasionally could he see birds flying across the sky or schools of fish leaping out of the water. The sky allowed birds to fly at will, the sea granted fish their leaps, That was probably the best description of the scene before him. There was an unprecedented feeling of vastness, but also a faint sense of solitude. Although he had run away from the saw shark, getting ashore alone was no easy feat. If there was any slight issue with the steamboat, he might have to enact Chen Chi's marvelous drift, going insane on this broken sea. Chen Chi took out a nautical chart he had pilfered from the restaurant, combining it with some knowledge to analyze his current position. The sea area of the Witch Sea can be divided into 3 sections, with the coastal waters being close to the city. Beyond the coastal waters is the Crack Sea area, where there are numerous crack copies, as well as some bizarre terrain. In the Crack Sea area, the creatures flying in the sky and hopping on the sea are indescribable monsters of terror. On the edge of the Crack Sea area, it is foggy and dimly lit, and further out is the Sea of Fog. Beyond the Sea of Fog is the lightless sea not shrouded by daylight, a place that the new world of day does not cover, and territory forbidden for humankind. He should be within the range of the coastal waters right now. Of course, coastal waters don't mean safety. A lot of merchant ships pass through the coastal waters, hence it's also where pirates are most rampant. In the Kingdom of Bays, going to sea is about connections and reputation, and his fligless little boat, if encountering a merchant ship, might even get extorted. As for encountering pirates, if he's not as strong as them, then he can only pray. But fortunately, the effect of Yellow Needle had not yet worn off, and he had a gun, so he still had a bit of self-preservation ability. According to this pace, perhaps I can return to Morrow Town in the Moonstone Islands tonight. Morrow Town is the birthplace of the original body's owner, a small island town with a fairly good geographical location, quite a decent starter village. Considering geographic and household registration factors, his next destination would be Morrow Town. Chen Chi put away the nautical chart, took a bite of bread, and gazed at the distant sea. It was indeed a nice experience to traverse from a city of steel and concrete to the open sea. In this vast world, even if he shouted about his humiliating past or did some unspeakable deeds, except for the ocean goddess, no one would know. The ocean goddess would listen to and receive everything. It was time to use those 2 items. Chen Chi took out the Transcendent Fishing Skill card and the Hunter's Yuhuo, which could strengthen his profession, from his backpack. Both of these extraordinary items could be used directly. Let's do it now. Hunter's Yuhuo, a prop of this level, needed to blend with blood to be used. Chen Chi looked around, cut his fingertip with a sharp part of the steamboat, and then touched the Hunter's Yuhuo again. Burn, Yuhuo. Chen Chi mentally said. When the blood touched the amber-colored gem-like Hunter's Yuhuo, it rapidly ignited into flames. The flames burned at his fingertip, and with it, a scorching transcendent aura permeated his blood, spread to his limbs, entered his heart, then surged into deeper places, reaching his soul. It felt as if boiling lava was forcibly poured into his mouth, then set his whole body on fire. Beyond that, a plethora of indescribable deep-sea monsters appeared before his eyes, surging towards him. In his mind, it was as if he were holding a massive blade, his body ablaze with terrifying blue fire, slaughtering these monsters one by one. This was the knowledge of a deep-sea hunter within the Hunter's Yuhuo. A prompt appeared before his eyes. You have assimilated the Hunter's Yuhuo, huff, huff. Chen Chi gasped heavily. The experience of using a high-order extraordinary prop was indeed too exhilarating compared to a game. The soul was cast by Yuhuo, it was that legendary prop. Fortunately, the burning sensation didn't last long. Chen Chi closed his eyes and felt some sort of power within the depths of his soul being strengthened. At the same time, in his mind, he also mastered much knowledge about the deep-sea monsters, as well as knowledge of fighting those gigantic creatures. The gradual dissipation of the scalding sensation and the appearance of the prompt meant that he had completely assimilated the residual fire. Now, if he had a transcendent profession, it would be enhanced. Unfortunately, he hadn't officially embarked on the path of the transcendent yet, so he couldn't enjoy the benefits Yuhuo provided. To ascend to the transcendent, Chen Chi already had some plans in mind. Ordinarily, transcendent occupation cards are not easy to obtain. Most new players who don't have a good start have to wait a long time during their spiritual awakening. Even if first-order transcendent occupation card requires considerable effort to acquire. And those occupation cards circulating in the market would be purchased first by noble families and big businessmen, and common people who want to buy one would have to pay a premium, and often what they buy are rubbish occupation cards. However, according to the timeline, the crack tide that affects the entire Witch Sea will soon arrive. A huge number of cracks will lead to a significant increase in the number of transcendent occupation cards. Therefore, with sufficient information, he could even pick out a desirable first-order transcendent profession. Chapter 17, Crack Tide 2. Once on shore, the first thing to do was to investigate the information about transcendent occupation cards and cracks. Immediately afterward, Chen Chi pulled out the second item he had obtained from the treasure chest, the skill card Fishing in the Storm. The use of the skill card was very simple. Once the conditions were met, one just had to hold it in hand and use it with a single thought. Use. The Azure Occupation card turned into ink like water at the fingertips, then transformed into bubbles and disappeared without a trace. At this moment, the skill Transcendent Fishing Level 1 also appeared on his panel. His deep sea affinity couldn't level up, so Transcendent Fishing was the only skill he could use by spending spiritual points right now. Chen-Chi used the 50 spiritual points he had farmed in the crack within the Sea Beast Cave to level up from level 1 to level 2. Chen-Chi looked at this skill, slightly surprised. Such a common life skill could actually be leveled up 3 times, and now he didn't have enough spiritual points left. With the use of the skill card, he suddenly felt an inexplicable confidence. That was, even if he lay down to fish, he could catch fish amidst a storm. Why not? Give it a try. Chen-Chi picked up the fishing rod, gave it a light toss, and the hook landed in the sea. What he was learning was not ordinary fishing but transcendent fishing. The biggest difference lay in the bait. The bait for ordinary fishing was all food. Whereas for transcendent fishing, one transferred their own spiritual power to the hook, creating bait with the essence of their spiritual power. His current spiritual power capacity was a bit higher than an ordinary person's. Having mastered this skill, from now on, he would become an enviable fisherman who would never return empty-handed. The fish from this place, to casually fish one out, Chen-Chi created bait at the hook, which resembled a spiraling orb. In an instant, he felt a significant amount of spiritual power being drained from his body. This skill has such a high consumption. Chen-Chi gripped the fishing rod, waiting for a fish to bite. Fishing while sailing in this manner shouldn't pose a problem, right? 5 minutes later, Chen-Chi blinked and began to doubt, could he really catch fish this way? However, before he could catch a fish, something even more terrifying happened. In the next moment, fierce sea winds blew, and a huge shadow began to engulf the area. Accompanied by a loud rumble of thunder, raindrops started hitting him. The harbinger of a tempest. Though the steamboat was a great means to escape, its ability to resist the waves was mediocre. It had been clear skies just a moment ago. What on earth is? Suddenly, the sound of the wind passed by his ears, and within this fleeting moment, he thought he heard the roar of monsters. Out of the blue, Chen-Chi suddenly recalled the promotional video for Witch Sea. On a sunny day, the sky suddenly darkened, clouds closed in, and fierce winds howled. The foreign girl on board the ship, her flower crown knocked into the sea by a wave, reached out to retrieve it when suddenly, a gigantic shadow surfaced slowly from the ocean depths, like a dark mountain, engulfing the entire ship. As the camera continued to pan up, the entire Witch Sea was enveloped by a colossal storm. This was a far-reaching storm, also marking the first appearance of the main character of the Witch Sea main storyline, the foreign girl known as the Flower Witch. This abnormal weather, by causing a large number of cracks to form, was also known as the crack tide. Following this storm, cracks would sprout across Witch Sea like bamboo after the rain, thus signaling the onset of the great era of cracks in Witch Sea. Previously, Chen-Chi could only tentatively determine the timeline through a little raven. And now, he was certain that the storm he was facing could very likely mark the beginning of the crack tide. As cracks revived and great whales exhaled, the once calm seas were now incessantly tumultuous, and the monsters dwelling in the deep sea would also emerge to the surface. It would be a frightful day without sleep. Crack tide, huh, troublesome. If it were normal circumstances, he'd had popped a bottle of champagne for this storm. After all, more cracks meant more opportunities to increase his strength, which was undoubtedly a good thing. But the problem was, he was now on a small steamboat. May the sea goddess show some restraint and not stir up too great a storm, Chen-Chi thought to himself. However, his swimming skills were quite decent, and with the effects of the yellow needle still active, coupled with the knowledge of the hunter Hueco, he had some ability to contend with the storm. As the storm approached, Chen-Chi decisively took out a bandage from his backpack and secured items such as his black knife and his backpack itself to prevent them from falling into the sea. Next, he secured the fishing rod to the boat with the bandage as well. His fishing skill was named Fishing in the Storm. That is, even in the midst of a storm, there was a chance to catch fish. In the ocean, fishing skills were quite useful. Fish, take the bait. That should do it. After arranging some things, Chen-Chi rubbed his palms together and then looked into the distance. In less than 3 minutes, the entire sea was shrouded under a dark sky. Suddenly, Chen-Chi's pupils constricted slightly. At the end of the gray sea horizon, a faint light appeared out of nowhere. Light? Ship lights? A boat? At this time, he encountered a boat. Chen-Chi gripped the black knife. And the light grew brighter, surging toward his direction. Chen-Chi's eyes widened as he saw from afar that it was a small, pitch-black boat with a ship light. On the open sea, many horrifying legends are told. Among them, there are many about pitch-black boats. If one encounters a small, pitch-black boat under a cloud-covered sky or at night, and the boat has a lantern lit, do not attempt to approach it, and don't hesitate. Escape immediately, for that boat will take people to another world. Chen-Chi stared fixedly at the approaching boat. He didn't run away, for the speed of the black boat far surpassed that of the steamboat. That is, he simply couldn't outrun it. Moreover, it was undoubtedly heading straight for him. Upon closer inspection, one would realize that the pitch-black hull was less like a boat and more like sharp, pitch-black scales, and that the ship light was more of a lantern. Was this a deep-sea monster? Wait. Chen-Chi suddenly realized something. The creature was not just heading for him, but also for his bait. Chen-Chi quickly picked up the fishing rod, then forcefully flicked it upwards. With his flick of the rod, the pitch-black boat began to reveal its true form. Boom. Among the giant waves, a sea beast akin to a geelong leapt violently from beneath the sea, opening its 3 rows of bloody fangs, and ferociously bit at the bait in midair. Its serpentine body leapt over Chen-Chi. It was not any pitch-black boat, but rather a deep-sea monster showing only half of its head. Boom. Ha, 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 the serpent-like monster bit down on the bait and plunged back into the sea, shaking its sharp, steel-like giant tail vigorously, exhaling heavily. Chen-Chi turned his head back, touched his chin thoughtfully, and watched the sea beast's odd movements. What on earth did I catch? Chapter 18, Nearshore Dominator. The deep-sea monster swayed its body, lifting its head, its sharp black scales and surging waves dancing in unison, its massive form moving like a mountain. The deep-sea hunter's treasure did not deceive him. Fishing in the storm was a life skill that allowed one to catch fish even in a storm. However, could this really be called a fish? Chen-Chi stood on the boat, looking up at the colossal creature, at least 20 meters long, and stroked his chin. Well, good thing he thought he encountered some strange creature. Upon closer inspection, it was just a sea dragon capable of annihilating fleets and striking fear into people's hearts. He recognized this monster as a species that loved to race across the ocean, one of the few frequently found in nearshore areas. Its name was the Black Ship Sea Dragon, a renowned deep-sea species in nearshore regions. Based on its size, it seemed to be a juvenile. If we didn't consider Chen-Chi's special circumstances, this could be one of the most terrifying legends of the Black Ship with lights. Due to several serious maritime accidents it caused in nearshore areas. Therefore, it had a more domineering and widely recognized title, Nearshore Dominator. Many people on the sea would shudder just hearing this name. Even the fleets under the 4 pirate emperors gave it a wide berth upon sighting the Nearshore Dominator. However, despite having deep-sea affinity, the massive difference in size made Chen-Chi slightly afraid. Ha! The Black Ship Sea Dragon opened its jaws wide, waving its black-scaled tail, and roared at Chen-Chi. Such big talk. Chen-Chi shielded himself with his hand and took a closer look at the colossal sea dragon. Ha, 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 the Black Ship Sea Dragon's blue eyes, as big as bronze bells, kept spewing blood vapor, shaking its tail. Chen-Chi was somewhat surprised. The appearance of the deep-sea monster before him reminded him of a hardy canine species from Siberia on Earth. This thing, why does it feel like a husky? Upon closer inspection, those round blue eyes carried no ferocity but a bit of blue wisdom and a hint of cross-eyedness. Silly and goofy. Is it asking me for food? Chen-Chi retreated slightly. The other party showed no hostility, but its size was just too enormous. He couldn't withstand such a size difference. If the other party acted spoiled with him, forget about him, the fragile steamboat beneath him would instantly collapse. Too terrifying, he thought he should quickly get rid of it. Chen-Chi gently moved the fishing rod, realizing the bait on the hook had already been bitten off. Ha, 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 as the hook moved, the Black Ship Sea Dragon gasped, shaking its steel tail even more vigorously. Just for a piece of bait. Outrageous. Not at all like the Nearshore Dominator. Chen-Chi reprimanded it, reconsidering his extraordinary fishing skill. This extraordinary fishing skill appeared more effective than he had imagined. Many deep-sea transcendent creatures were picky eaters, and large carnivorous monsters like the Black Ship Sea Dragon generally were rarely interested in a simple ball of spiritual power. Yet this bait, constructed with transcendent power, wasn't nutritious but was incredibly tasty. Ha ha ha, the Black Ship Sea Dragon squinted its eyes and followed the movement of the fishing rod. Got it, got it. Chen-Chi helplessly concentrated his spiritual power again, forming an extraordinary fish bait on the hook. As soon as it formed, the Black Ship Sea Dragon opened its mouth wide, bit down on the bait, and splashed in the water. Boom. Boom. Clearly, it was very happy. Chen-Chi, soaked to the bone by the splashes, felt conflicted. Obviously, this was not a pet he could control. Alright, once you're full, go play somewhere else. Chen-Chi waved his hand, unsure if the other party could understand his language. Right now, He still had to outwit and outlast the storm, leaving him no energy to entertain the nearshore dominator. The storm continued to batter his poor little boat. The black ship Sea Dragon shook its head, seemingly understanding something. It swiftly dove underwater. Chenchi also bent down, reducing the speed of the steamboat, cautiously navigating through the storm. The storm was approaching. It was going to be a long journey. Splash. Before Chenchi could sigh, a huge head with a lit lamp emerged from the water again and exhaled in his direction. Still here? I don't fear you, but my little boat does. Chenchi reluctantly turned his head, looking at the silly nearshore dominator. Although he had deep-sea affinity, his current strength wasn't sufficient to directly drive away the deep-sea monster. Upon initiating the attack, the deep-sea monster could also counterattack him. Moreover, even if he exerted all his strength to drive it away, this nearshore dominator might just think Chenchi was giving it a massage. Fortunately, this small sea dragon was quite smart and did not collide with his boat. Suddenly, Chenchi's eyes lit up. Its intention seemed not to be asking for food, but to give him something. The black ship Sea Dragon opened its bloodthirsty mouth with its 3 rows of sharp teeth. On its scarlet tongue lay a shiny object. Chenchi cautiously used his fishing rod to pull it out of its mouth. Palm-sized, this was a small goldfish. Chenchi held the dead little creature in his hand. He had seen this thing in the last few pages of Sea Beast Medicinal Materials collection guide given to him by the ship doctor, Little Crow. The last 5 pages were all extremely rare sea beasts. Little Crow, being a deep-sea enthusiast, dreamed of raising one. Of course, she had never owned even one. Golden scaled fish. At that moment, Chenchi's eyes were blinded by the golden light emanating. The golden scaled fish lived in deeper waters and swam at considerable speeds. Thus, ordinary fishing boats found it hard to catch them. Usually, it required powerful transcendent beings to personally dive deep to catch them. Chenchi took out the soaked book and carefully turned to the last few pages. As he read, an illusory prompt also appeared before his eyes. In the new day game settings, the panel's prompts depended on various aspects, with the most important one being one's own known knowledge. His player panel wasn't omniscient, partially adhering to this setting. Golden scaled fish, nature form, cup usage, an extraordinary fish symbolizing wealth and health. Consuming it after cooking can permanently increase one's constitution and provide a small amount of self-healing speed. Description: lucky, well done, nearshore dominator. Chenchi looked at the introduction of the dead golden scaled fish. Symbolized money, contracts, wealth, transactions, and other elements. The golden scaled fish was similar to the koi fish on Earth. People believed that seeing one would bring continuous good luck and wealth for a week. Living golden scaled fish were extremely expensive ornamental species, however, the one given by the black ship Sea Dragon was already dead. Whereas the cup represented the primary use of the golden scaled fish. A strong constitution was the core threshold for many ways to get stronger. Moreover, small healing speed might sound minimal, but in actual combat, it could increase the self-healing speed of external injuries, making it a quite powerful skill. This was truly a great supplement. The attribute-boosting yellow needle was at least purchasable, but the golden-scaled fish largely depended on luck. According to the Sea Beast usage guide, this thing wasn't suitable for raw consumption. The golden-scaled fish had a reasonably long shelf life, and the temperature was quite stable. Chenchi put it into his backpack. With the yellow needle, golden-scaled fish, plus the initial attribute boost, his early constitution would reach a rather formidable level. Well done, black ship Sea Dragon. In a sense, it was like he had caught a golden-scaled fish. Chenchi gently patted its head with his hand. Ha, 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 seemingly feeling Chenchi's mood, the black ship Sea Dragon nodded and happily wagged its tail, circling his boat a few times. Then it summed a few times, making sounds implying it was about to leave. Leaving? Chenchi waved his hand. Goodbye. Chenchi marked this spot in his memory, maybe they would meet again someday. The black ship Sea Dragon wagged its tail. Swoosh. With a swooshing sound, like a rocket, it shot out, raising waves on the sea surface, disappearing from his sight in an instant. With that speed, it seemed capable of crashing through a large steel steamship. The nearshore dominator was indeed fast. Chenchi gazed into the distance, and perhaps blinded by the golden light of the fish, he found the fierce beast somewhat cute. Splash. Splash. With the departure of the black ship Sea Dragon, waves hit his small boat once again. His clothes were already thoroughly soaked by the seawater, and despite being cotton, they felt like a heavy, cold armor. The cold intensified, bringing about a sense of weakness, as the yellow needle's effect diminished. The storm was quite a trial. To last until the shore, I'll have to endure for a while. Chenchi bent down, seizing the moment to consume the food and fresh water in his backpack. There was still a considerable distance to the land. The upcoming period would be a strenuous one. Chapter 19, lighthouse in the stormy weather, navigating a small boat and reaching the shore was no easy task. Raindrops continuously pelted Chenchi's body, and his thoughts shifted from wanting to reach the shore quickly to simply not falling off the boat. His body became exhausted, and his consciousness gradually blurred. He didn't know how much time had passed, but the blazing daylight in the sky began to wane and eventually extinguished. A round, slightly red moon slowly rose from the end of the coastline. This marked the descent of nightfall and the vanishing of daylight. Nighttime already. Chenchi weakly opened his eyes and looked at the pitch-black world before him. The storm had tormented his body severely. In the heavy rain, his sense of time was totally blurred. The steamboat, impacted by the waves, also suffered damage and significantly slowed down. This boat probably would become unusable after reaching the shore. However, there was a piece of good news. As the night descended, the storm now had only wind and some drizzle left. Where am I? Chenchi braced against the sea wind and looked ahead. Suddenly, a faint light hit his eyes. Another light. Chenchi raised his head and looked towards the source of the light. The light grew brighter and brighter. Suddenly facing the strong light, he had to squint his eyes. In the distant blur, atop a huge tall tower, an old man holding an oil lamp vaguely looked at him with a puzzled expression. It's the lighthouse. Chenchi lay on the boat, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Finally. He had finally reached land. Seeing the lighthouse meant he was not far from the town and the shore. Chenchi shook his head, sat up, and stretched his limbs. The lighthouse was an essential navigational structure for maritime journeys. The lighthouses in the Which Sea region also had to guard against large sea beast attacks and special situations like Highland fleet invasions. Thus, the lamp keeper was usually a highly respected, highly inspired, and powerful transcendent. This was an extremely boring yet crucial job. The 70-year-old lighthouse keeper looked towards Chenchi's direction. Today's storm had lasted so long, how could there still be someone at sea? Moreover, it seemed to be a young man. This was too reckless. As an elder, the lighthouse keeper always had much concern for young people. He cleared his throat and shouted in a loud voice, "Young man, are you alright? Do you need help?" "What did you say?" "The voice is too low." Chenchi patted his head and let the water out of his ears. Upon seeing the light, he became spirited again. Whatever it was, he smiled, then waved his hand. "Why are you smiling? Be serious." The lighthouse keeper anxiously shouted louder, "The wind is not right tonight. There might be monsters in the sea. Get to the shore quickly, don't go out to sea tonight or tomorrow." He shook his head, thinking that the boy seemed completely unworried and probably didn't understand what had happened tonight. His high inspiration allowed him to clearly sense an ancient aura mixed in the storm today, like a monster's whisper. Such winds hadn't blown over the sea for a long time. From his experience, this monster-like roaring sea wind indicated that some monsters, originally active in the deep sea, were coming to the surface. It seemed something major had happened. Many fishermen and merchants had met with mishaps today. And at night, sea beasts became even more rampant. This boy, sitting in such a small boat, was lucky not to be attacked by sea beasts. "Get to the shore quickly." The lighthouse keeper yelled loudly. He couldn't guarantee what might pop out of the seawater. "Okay. I'll get to the shore immediately." Chenchi responded and slightly sped up his steamboat. With the propeller turning, his small boat sailed towards the island town named Mundo Town. This was the town he was about to reach, also the town where the original owner of his body was born. Chenchi opened the sea chart again and glanced at the Shell Country's terrain and the location of Mundo Town. The major coastal city of the Shell Country was called Moonstone City. Besides Moonstone City, there were many islands along the Shell Country's coast where humans could live. Moonstone Islands, Devil Islands, and so on. Many large and small towns had been established on these islands. Mundo Town was one of the many towns in the Moonstone Islands. By reading the memories of the original owner, Chenchi had gained significant understanding of this place. First, to the people of the Shell Country, the islands were not a good place. Inconvenient transportation, lack of entertainment, and frequent threats from waves and sea beasts. Not to mention the increasingly rampant pirates lately. The small towns on the islands were just remote rural areas. Many young people from the islands longed for the prosperous cities of the Shell Country. They worked from dawn to dusk every day, just to go to the big cities and own a house. Every year, many young people left the islands and headed to the big inland cities of the Shell Country. However, in Chenchi's view, Mundo Town was quite a good starting village. In addition to having a household registration in Mundo Town, more importantly, with the start of the crack tide, many cracks would be born on the sea. And cracks meant extraordinary resources, meant land, meant oil, meant money, meant power. When the complete crack tide of the Witch Sea arrived, it wouldn't be the islanders rushing to the inland. It would be the inlanders coming to the sea for adventures, sparking an adventure era like the gold rush in America. These islands, closer to the dense crack regions, would be more populated than big cities due to their better transportation locations, making them more favored by adventurers. Well, housing prices might even rise slightly. Here I am. Tenchi stopped the steamboat and excitedly jumped onto the port of Morrow Town. He then shook off the water from his body like a cat. This was the feeling of solid land. How refreshing. After properly securing the steamboat, Tenchi planned to get something to eat as he was really hungry. Seeing Tenchi reaching the shore, the lighthouse keeper finally felt relieved. Luckily, nothing major happened. Suddenly, the lighthouse keeper had a flash of inspiration. That young man just now was the boy who had sea beast disease and went to the city for work a few months ago. He still managed to come back and even bought a small boat. The lighthouse keeper felt a bit sentimental. Sea beast disease, as the name implied, meant terrifying deep-sea creatures had infected a human body. To cure it, one typically needed a bloody surgery, and finding an unlicensed black doctor would also cost a large sum of money. Even he himself probably couldn't afford so much money immediately. In his view, if Tenchi could return, it must be either because he was ready to die in his hometown, or he had been forced to join some illegal organization, earning money through labor, with a perilous fate. This generation of young people, it isn't easy for them. The lighthouse keeper sighed and shook his head. Having just ended a storm, the pier at Morrow Town was exceptionally quiet. Tenchi walked towards the town while rummaging through his backpack. In his backpack, besides the treasure map, were the medical supplies given by the little crow. Among them, the healing potions could be sold without a loss. Such good items for emergency healing were valuable everywhere. The problem was that Tenchi himself currently had a great need for healing potions too. Painkillers and calming sea beast oil were also sellable items. But the sum amount of miscellaneous items wasn't much either. Am I really going to have to work in a factory? Tenchi frowned deeply. In Morrow Town, there was a crack mine with a 0% mutation rate, where anyone could apply. Having transmigrated and still needing to work, no, that's out of the question. As a strategy guide creator, he knew that working was actually not a bad option in many situations. But now he had the black knife, and his attributes weren't bad, so the fastest way to make money was still to explore cracks. Tenchi shook his head. Right now, he didn't even have a bit of money on him. Gold coins were more popular among pirates, whereas ordinary people used the Shell country's official currency, shell coins. Besides the different name, shell coins were very similar to Earth's currency, also a type of paper money. As a country embodying the shell nature form, the shell country's currency was relatively stable. Shell coins were also quite commonly accepted in other countries, making them a fairly reliable currency. Before I get some money, I can only continue eating seawater-soaked bread. Tenchi looked at the bread soaked by seawater in his backpack, smiling bitterly. His current funds weren't enough to allow him a good meal. But at least he was a transmigrator, going hungry wasn't such a big deal. Suddenly, a whiff of grilled food aroma drifted in. Who's grilling at night? Especially right after a stormy evening. Tenchi looked in the direction of the aroma. Morrow Town's dockside tavern, the only tavern on the entire island. He saw a group of young people around a grill roasting fish outside the tavern. Inside the tavern, people's loud and noisy voices could be heard. So many people on a stormy night. This tavern is packed. Tenchi was slightly surprised, even city taverns rarely had this many people. He looked up and saw the tavern sign written on a banner. It's a great day today, all drinks and meat, even vegetables, are free inside the tavern. Free. All free. Tenchi's heart pounded. It was just a simple island tavern, making everything free would leave the owner working for nothing for a month or even two. For a small town owner, this was a huge expense. What good day was it to make such a big giveaway? Tenchi pondered and, fueled by curiosity, took a few steps forward. Unknowingly, he stepped over a drunkard at the doorway and squeezed into the noisy tavern. Chapter 20, Newbie Village Morrow Town. Of course, Tenchi's purpose in entering the tavern wasn't just the simple idea of getting a free meal and drink. As everyone knows, a tavern is a place with a crowd of all sorts and a good place to gather information. His most important task now was to collect information on the crack near Morrow Town and then strive to become a transcendent as soon as possible. The moment he stepped into the tavern, a wave of low-quality liquor aroma hit him in the face. The inside of the tavern was extremely crowded, with every table fully occupied. Fortunately, there were still seats available near the counter at the front. Tenchi sat down next to the counter and drank a bottle of warm wine. With the warm wine in his belly, his whole body felt a lot warmer. Cool. Although this watered-down wine was nothing compared to Earth's delightful soda, it was quite good now. As for roasted meat, that kind of good stuff had already been snatched up. But luckily, There were still plenty of peanuts. Chen-Chi cracked peanuts while watching the lively crowd. People, buoyed by the alcohol, chatted away. Hey, have you heard? The Witch Times Gold Badge reporter captured the movements of the 4 pirate emperors. There were more than 500 ships speeding on the sea. This is a huge operation, and the goal is to find a legendary treasure. Treasure? What's that got to do with us country folk, brother? You should check out the Witch Times instead. The newspaper reported on the Countess's affair, and the thighs in that photo, beautiful indeed, boss. Congratulations on your daughter returning early from Country Royal University. She can buy a house in Moonstone City, or directly in the capital, it's no problem at all. Chen-Chi's gaze quickly locked onto the key figures in the crowd. The tavern owner and his precious daughter. The reason why everything in the tavern was free today was that his daughter had returned early from Country Royal University to take a position in Morrow Town. Wait, Country Royal University? Chen-Chi was taken aback. In the New World, universities and colleges were gathering places for transcendence. Within these institutions, students are offered extraordinary resources beyond the imagination of ordinary people, as well as a slew of strength assessments. Anyone associated with a college possessed exceptional skills to some degree or another. Since all the players started with awakened spiritual talent, a college start was also recognized as the best among players. And Country Royal University was the most famous and renowned school in the entire Shell Kingdom. Each year, Country Royal University produced many exceptionally talented individuals for the world. The Royal 7 Eccentrics, the Imperial Capital's 3G. Many NPCs that left a deep impression on the players came from Country Royal University. Of course, in such a remote town, having a transcendent able to get into the Royal University was enough to change a family's fate and social status. The early return of a daughter who was accepted into a top-ranking transcendent school was truly a celebration within a celebration. No wonder the tavern owner was so generously footing the bill. Chen-Chi grabbed a handful of peanuts and munched eagerly, continuing to watch the drama unfold. At this moment, everyone was surrounding the tavern owner, heaping praise on him, their eyes full of envy. Meanwhile, the owner's young daughter stood behind him, not saying a word, very quiet. Chen-Chi peeked through gaps in the crowd at her. She had silver white hair, wore a mage's hat, and was dressed in a simple and unsophisticated white apprentice uniform. Very much the standard young mage apprentice outfit. Chen-Chi accessed the memories of his original self. She was considered a peer of his and a true genius. At the age of 5, she exhibited extraordinary talent, spending her days wielding a magic wand twice her height and practicing spells on rocks with her short little legs. Later, with the help of a noble, she successfully got into Country Royal University Book College. She should be about 16 this year. Why does she look so familiar? Chen-Chi reflected, remembering that this was also a rather famous character on the gaming forums. And just then, an impatient figure slowly pushed through the crowd and said in a deep voice, "Excuse me, everyone, could you make way so I can have a word with the new tutor?" Though the man's voice wasn't loud, his portly figure and the golden patterns on his expensive suit proved his extraordinary status. Chen-Chi thought for a moment. This man was none other than the most distinguished person in Morrow Town, Mayor D.A. Morrow. He controlled Morrow Town's most important asset, the mine crack, and also handled all sorts of affairs big and small, making him the wealthiest and most prestigious person in Morrow Town. One could say, he was the lord of this island. Although the mayor was very wealthy, he was also extremely frugal. After squandering half of his fortune in his earlier years, he became deeply fixated on establishing a powerful family. Therefore, he spent a lot of money and effort marrying an ugly yet robust wife. When Mayor D.A. Morrow spoke, the crowd parted obediently. Most people had to give Mayor D.A. Morrow face. The tavern owner's daughter blinked her blue eyes and looked at Mayor D.A. Morrow with some confusion. Clearly, he came specifically for her, the talented graduate. A 16-year-old transcendent who graduated from Country Royal University. Without a doubt, her future was set to far exceed that of Mayor D.A. Morrow. Chen-Chi thought to himself. Mayor D.A. Morrow approached her, bending slightly forward and then feeling uncomfortable, he straightened up a bit. He seemed pushed by two forces until, with some impatience from the crowd, he managed to squeeze out a smile. No, I should call you the tutor of Morrow Town. In the time that follows, the youth of Morrow Town will be troubling you. Do you remember me? I am Mayor D.A. Morrow. I helped quite a bit with the establishment and construction of your father's tavern when I was younger. My 2 children, a son and a daughter, have also reached the age to apply for the Transcendent Academy and have successfully become first-order transcendents. They have some talent, passing the preliminary screening of the exam but failing in the first round. Failing in the first round? Chen-Chi frowned like an old grandpa on the subway. As a strategy content creator, he had helped many players get through the Academy's exams. To be admitted to the Transcendent Academy, one must pass at least 5 rounds of exams. And the first round of examination is a very simple written test. Failing the first round, how do you conclude they are so talented? Mayor D'Amaro paused for a long time before continuing. I believe my children's talents are not bad, and with hard work, it is not impossible for them to become third-tier transcendents. Anne, since you are from the Royal University, do you have any method that can allow them to enter the Royal University as well? She graduated from there, not built the university. Chen-Chi couldn't help mocking in his mind. The tavern owner's daughter, by appearance, looked like the quiet, naturally dazed type. Confronted with Mayor D'Amaro's question, the tavern owner's daughter, already somewhat sluggish, looked even more like a stuck robot. Her head turned around. Suddenly, in that instant, her blue eyes met with Chen-Chi's. What are you looking at me for? Chen-Chi, who was snacking on peanuts while watching the drama unfold, was momentarily stunned, his hand holding the peanuts pausing. These peanuts and drinks on the counter should be free, right? Wait a minute. Why has everyone's gaze suddenly turned towards me? However, he was not given time to think. In the next moment, the tavern owner's daughter picked up her magic wand and moved with the agility of a cat, arriving in front of Chen-Chi in an instant. The distance between them closed rapidly, and she was now merely a palm's length away from him. A formidable presence weighed upon him. Her sudden action caused Chen-Chi to feel somewhat panicked. She tilted her head and leaned closer, much like a greedy merchant scrutinizing a priceless treasure. Sniff, sniff, sniff. After smelling him, she excitedly said, "It's blood, and seawater, along with the scent of a transcendent awakening." Chapter 21 Newbie Mentor. And she realized I was a spiritual awaken. Chen-Chi felt his heart rate accelerate. Once ordinary people step on a path to becoming transcendent, they emit a special spiritual power field. But at the end of the day, he was just a spiritual awaken, not a true transcendent, emitting a barely noticeable aura. In contrast to his faint aura was the other party's spiritual power field. The other party was clearly a frail-looking young girl, but to him, she seemed like a towering white tiger. She was completely different from the other transcendents he had encountered before, like the little crow and the black-eyed captain. Such strong spiritual pressure. Chen-Chi couldn't help but remark. Sniff, sniff, sniff. Following that, An looked at Chen-Chi again and asked curiously, "Have you been spiritually awakened?" "Yes." Chen-Chi nodded. An turned back to the mayor of Maro Town and asked, "Mayor Maro, didn't you tell me there are only 6 spiritual awakeners in town? And one is about my age. Awakening at this age, he is quite impressive. Is she praising me?" Chen-Chi silently ate a peanut. At the sight of him, her face seemed to carry a faint joy, with no malice. "There are indeed only 6. The mayor's face was puzzled as his gaze also turned to Chen-Chi. Although he was stingy, as the mayor, he knew everyone in the town, including all their misdemeanors. Black hair, young, and he seemed to have just been caught in heavy rain. "Isn't this Chi, who went to Moonstone City due to illness some days ago?" "Chi." The mayor blurted out, looking Chen-Chi up and down again, "You're back, is your illness cured?" His sea beast disease was suppressed due to deep-sea affinity. Being recognized. Chen-Chi read the original owner's memories, trying to familiarize himself with these people. "No, but it's temporarily suppressed. If I want to cure it, I still need quite a bit of money." "Oh, that's a miracle, a miracle." The mayor nodded his head without asking further. Having returned from a big city, he undoubtedly experienced many troublesome things. It wouldn't be good to probe further. The mayor kept his doubts to himself, and then with a rough voice, he said, "Have you been spiritually awakened? This is a good thing, after all, our islands need courageous transcendents." After speaking, Mayor immediately introduced Chen-Chi to An, mentioning a young man with high inspiration afflicted with sea beast disease. "Why have I suddenly become the center of conversation?" Chen-Chi was somewhat troubled, again picking up a handful of peanuts to eat. "I see." After listening, An stretched out her hand and introduced herself to Chen-Chi. "Hello, Chi. I am An, the new mentor appointed in Maro Town, responsible for assisting and nurturing all the young people nearby with potential to become transcendents. Mentor for beginners." The moment he heard this term, Chen-Chi suddenly had a tide of thoughts, recalling her identity. A mentor for beginners is, simply put, similar to many game characters like priests, village chiefs, or guides. This stems from the special system of Shell Country Academy. Every year, Shell Country Academy selects a group of outstanding students and stations them in remote areas of Shell Country to take on the role of mentor for beginners, nurturing the young from those areas. They assign tasks to ordinary people with potential, offer monetary and supernatural resource rewards, and can even grant occupation cards. Also, they maintain basic order in these remote locations. For players, mentors for beginners are literally mentors, often the NPC that many novices interact with the most. To date, many professional guides on forums have come from these beginner mentors. Players, through aggregating data, have a ranking of beginner mentors from the Witch forums. The Varian in front of him was a famously ranked mentor for beginners. Chen-Chi took another look at her. Anne, a graduate from Country Royal University and a master of large-scale destructive force. She had 2 nicknames. Because she became a third-order transcendent at a young age and progressed in strength rapidly, developing even faster than players did. Additionally, she often treated pirates who came to cause trouble and mocking nobles like dogs. Thus, she had the domineering nickname Anoten. Also, because she served as a mentor for beginners, being very conscientious and patient, she also carried another more domineering nickname, Teacherin. Of course, Chen-Chi preferred to use a more common and generic nickname, Teacherin. Anne brushed back her white hair behind her ears and spoke again. The spiritual power field around you is much stronger than that of ordinary people, which proves you have the talent to become a transcendent. If you want to embark on the path of the transcendent, I can offer you some guidance. Of course, if you need help. Anne extended her hand. A mentor for beginners isn't just about nurturing transcendence. In a relatively remote place like Morrow Town, anything related to the mysterious and supernatural is linked to this transcendent mentor. Chen-Chi was fairly familiar with the New Day's system of transcendent professions. But if he wanted to obtain information about the crack, the simplest way was to seek help from this mentor for beginners. Chen-Chi extended his hand and said, I indeed want to enter the path of the transcendent and I need some guidance. The crowd watched this scene, some surprised. They did not expect Chen-Chi to have survived, let alone become a spiritually awakened with great potential. At that moment, Anne's father, the red-faced tavern owner, loudly said, All right, Anne, this is your celebration, not a time to talk about work, or to listen to some old fool ramble on. You should know, everyone still wants to hear about your experiences in the capital. As he spoke, the tavern owner glared fiercely at Morrow Town's mayor. Now is not the time for certain self-important figures making impractical demands. The mayor of Morrow Town hung his head, feeling as if he had shrunk. Anne gave a bitter smile, then said to Chen-Chi, Let's talk after this celebration is over. Yes. Chen-Chi agreed. After Anne left, the disheartened mayor of Morrow Town sighed heavily, a look of depression on his face. Suddenly, a light seemed to flicker in front of the mayor's eyes, and he scratched his thinning scalp. Chen-Chi, you're back. It seems you hit a wall in Moonstone City. But don't worry, the timing of your return is just right. Why? Chen-Chi deliberately made a puzzled expression. Based on his speculation, the reason Anne, as a transcendent, had came to Morrow Town to serve as a mentor was a decision made by Shell Country's high command. The crack tide was approaching, and the high-ranking officials in charge of monitoring the cracks must have also noticed abnormalities. Therefore, they had dispatched some transcendents ahead of time to prevent the situation from worsening. Of course, Shell Country probably hadn't completely confirmed the arrival of the crack tide yet. Once they had, more and more newbie mentors would appear on these coastal islands. The mayor of Morrow Town stroked his goatee. You might not know, but several new cracks have appeared here in the Moonstone Islands lately. New, unknown cracks. Chen-Chi immediately asked, Cracks, mayor of Morrow Town, do you have specific news? I don't know, after all, I'm old and no longer at an age to take risks. From the mentor's reaction just now, your talent is quite impressive. If you're lucky, perhaps in a few weeks, you could become a first-order transcendent, just like my son. You're about the same age, so you could support each other then, especially since, as you know, cracks are too dangerous, and a slight misstep can mean death. We're not like those city nobles who were fed transcendent occupation cards with their milk. The mayor of Morrow Town said a lot all at once. Even the mayor of Morrow Town doesn't know, so it seems I'll have to ask the newbie mentor. Chen-Chi thought to himself, taking a sip of his beer. The mayor of Morrow Town sat down next to Chen-Chi, also pouring a glass, sigh. Not every young person can have innate talents like and from an early age. It might turn out like you or my child, clearly having talent but unfortunately have gotten sick. I hope with your return this time, you can become a transcendent soon and earn the money to cure your illness. If you really need money, you can also borrow from me. The mayor of Morrow Town clinked his glass with Chen-Chi, continuously voicing his worries. On one hand, he hoped his child would become strong early, but on the other hand, he feared his child dying tragically in a crack. Having said that, the mayor of Morrow Town wanted to drink a few more glasses with Chen-Chi, but before he could drink, he thudded onto the counter, passed out drunk. That's it, passed out? That's a bit weak. I haven't eaten enough yet. Suddenly, Chen-Chi noticed two newspapers at the spot where the mayor of Morrow Town had passed out. In this world without the internet, Newspapers are the quickest way for ordinary people to learn about the world's status. Chen-Chi picked up the newspapers, and at the top of the page, it read White Dove newspaper in big letters, with golden letters spelling Bellularn underneath the title. The White Dove newspaper is renowned for its timeliness, aiming to report major events in the Witch Sea as they happen. From the date in the bottom left corner, it seemed it was freshly printed yesterday. Witch suspected of appearing, slaughtering the Black Rabbit Gang. Is this true or false? Buyer Temperor's Black Whale Group's big move. According to sources, the Black Whale Group has found a legendary treasure map. As of yesterday, 50 ships under the command of the Black Whale Group had set sail. What kind of treasure has the Black Whale Group so agitated? Stay tuned for White Dove newspaper's chief gold medal journalist, Pellu, to unravel it for you tomorrow. Black Whale Group. Chen-Chi thought. Now, the black-eyed captain must still be looking for him. He was sold to the Black Whale Group's saw shark by human traffickers. And the group of kidnappers who abducted him rarely cared about where their slaves came from. That means, for now, Saw Shark does not know his origins, and finding him could take some effort. Chen-Chi folded the newspaper and decided to remain as vigilant as possible. The second newspaper was the Witch Times, part of the same company as the White Dove newspaper, but the content was quite different. The Witch Times aimed to use an artistic approach to depict human love and hate. Furthermore, their editor-in-chief liked to use her paintbrush to boldly and profoundly illustrate the body curves of the news protagonists in a roller coaster manner. Simply put, it was melodramatic and borderline sensationalistic. Chen-Chi frowned as he read, continuing to eat. 2 hours of eating and drinking flew by in an instant. Chen-Chi patted his full belly. This was probably the most satisfying meal he had had since arriving in this world. Unbeknownst to him, many people were drunk and lay on the ground like mud. Only a few were still sober. Thud. Aren't you drunk? Unrolled up her pant legs and leaped over the mud-like figure known as the mayor of Morrow Town, approaching Chen-Chi. Chen-Chi said, "No, I didn't drink much, I just ate quite a bit. I'm also not good at drinking." She took a deep breath, her sparkling blue eyes looking at Chen-Chi. "It's finally over, let's talk, shall we? The smell of alcohol is too strong here. Can you come to my room? I have a really good transcendent occupation to recommend for your path to becoming a transcendent." Transcendent occupation recommendation? A flicker of curiosity crossed Chen-Chi's eyes. He got up and followed her. Chapter 22, Uniqueness's room was right at the back of the tavern, typical minimalist style, with only a bed and a desk chair aside from her work materials. Oh, and 2 large wooden magical staffs that stood 1.8 meters tall. If not for the runes on them, Chen-Chi would have thought they were hammers capable of smashing his head. The two found a place to sit down. Your inspiration is quite high, which means you have better talent in certain transcendent professions. Aizen spoke. She fetched a form, but before that, I need to fill in your information. Okay. Chen-Chi sat down patiently. Then, like an interviewer, began to ask, name? Chi. Gender? Male. Was it that hard to tell? Chen-Chi was slightly stunned. And suddenly realized something and explained, well, I'm not questioning your gender, nor your appearance, nor do I want to check your gender. In the capital, I've met many burly women and soft, cute men. Of course, I'm not referring to you. It's hard to describe. She was stuck again, not knowing how to explain her thoughts to Chen-Chi. Simply put, you shouldn't easily assume someone's gender, I understand. Chen-Chi summarized for her. In the transcendental world, that was not unusual. Sometimes, you couldn't even assume the other party's species. Yes, that's a perfect summary. Ahem. The tropic has gone off track. Coughed a couple of times. Although she had considerable transcendent power, speaking to strangers still made her a bit nervous. After asking the questions, she immediately redirected the conversation. Chi, according to my observation, your inspiration should be quite high. This means that you are very suitable for choosing the rule of the book and becoming a mage apprentice. Our shell country officially also has some unassigned apprentice occupation cards. Normally, these occupation cards are allocated to outstanding spirit awakeners. But given your high inspiration, according to the regulations, you can even get the apprentice occupation card in advance. And to get the occupation card in advance, you just have to complete the tasks assigned by the government. Of course, you won't be shortchanged of a single penny for these tasks. Getting an occupation card in advance. And not deducting any task rewards. One could say this was a secret benefit only for those with excellent talent in spirit awakening. Spreading this secret benefit might even provoke others' envy. Most people would need at least half a year to get a transcendent occupation card from Shell Country's official hands. That's why she chose a private room to discuss this. And silently waited, looking forward to seeing Chen-Chi's shocked expression. However, to her surprise, he showed no big reaction, instead looking thoughtful. Another lousy profession. Chen-Chi thought to himself. An apprentice, a first-tier book phase occupation card, only slightly enhancing memory and increasing the comprehension of magical knowledge without any attached skills. With an excellent magical staff and extraordinary inspiration, a first-tier apprentice could cast some weak spells. It was a pretty weak transcendent profession in the early stages. But undeniably, as a precursor profession to a mage, the apprentice had great future potential. However, like a doctor apprentice, this profession required a lot of time and substantial knowledge accumulation in the early stages. And had been noticed by Transcendence since she was a child and had a vast knowledge reserve. That's why she became a novice mentor and a powerful mage at such a young age. But for Chen-Chi, choosing the apprentice path meant entering a school and spending a lot of time studying books. In a world facing the threat of destruction. By the time he graduated, the world might already be gone. No, Chen-Chi looked up at him. Why the hesitation? Did I not explain clearly enough? And added, don't worry, this advanced occupation card doesn't come with additional costs. On the contrary, if you perform well, you will receive extra nurturing resources. If you can reach the second tier within half a year, we will provide you with a custom magic staff. If you reach the third tier within 3 years, you can apply to go to our neighboring country, the White Tower Federation, where book-oriented individuals flourish, to learn more profound magic techniques. Undescribed her journey, depicting it for Chen-Chi in a future-oriented manner. Chen-Chi chuckled helplessly. Everything comes with a price. If he accepted Shell Country's occupation card, it meant he would officially become a part of Shell Country's system from then on. He would follow the path Shell Country's government laid out for him. If he didn't have the talent for deep-sea affinity or wasn't aware of the impending catastrophe in the New Sun world, this might have been a decent choice. A relatively stable choice. Got to think of a way to decline. Chen-Chi pondered. For now, though, there was indeed a good reason to refuse. That was an important aspect of the transcendent profession system in the New Sun world, the rule of uniqueness. The transcendent system in New Sun was quite complex, with 13 nature forms, and each occupation card typically had 1, 2, or even 3 nature forms. Thus, there were a multitude of transcendent professions in its system. Apprentice of the book phase, travel mage of the lamp book phase, herbalist of the flower cup phase, recruit of the blade phase, forest hunter of the blade flower phase, and so on. These professions didn't follow a simple linear progression, each advancement offered multiple choices. But regarding advancement, from the second tier onwards, every transcendent had to obey a rule called the rule of uniqueness. The rule of uniqueness dictated that from the second tier onwards, every profession had to have the chosen nature form. For example, a first-tier doctor apprentice didn't have to advance to a second-tier doctor, they could become another advanced profession. A cup-phase doctor apprentice could advance to a second-tier cup-phase glutton and then to a third-tier cup book-phase blood-flesh mage. Although advancing from doctor apprentice to blood-flesh mage deviated significantly from medicine, looking quite bizarre, since each profession involved the cup phase, it was a coherent transcendent path. And this represented their rule of uniqueness as cup. Of course, considering the skill synergies between professions, such advancement was generally avoided. As a former game player, Chen-Chi hadn't paid much attention to these settings. But now, he had to take these things seriously. In the transcendent world of New Sun, there was an old saying. Every transcendent, before stepping onto the transcendent path, must, at the starting point on the sea of spirit trees, cut out their heart and place it there. Finally, they must tie a string to their heart to continue forward. The rule of uniqueness is the heartstring. To deviate from it meant certain loss. Chen-Chi organized his thoughts and declined tactfully, Teacher-un, I lack the professional knowledge system and might not be suitable for adhering to the rule of the book. Un's eyes slightly widened, she did not expect Chen-Chi to refuse such luxurious benefits. One couldn't waste talent for this reason. She urged again, you are a spirit awakener and have not reached the second tier yet. You have unlimited potential, there's no need to decide your rule too early. Apprentice is a first-tier profession and matches well with many mage professions. Your inspiration is high, which means you are a natural mage. As for professional knowledge, you're still young and can learn. If you encounter difficulties, I can also tutor you. My mind is made up. Please don't persuade me anymore. Chen-Chi coughed twice, I'll think about it. By the way, Teacher-un, apart from the apprentice, are there any other transcendent professions I can choose from? Or any information about the cracks in transcendent occupation cards? This was a rare opportunity. Un showed a helpless expression, shook her head, and took out a notebook. Indeed there are. Recently, many fishermen have encountered cracks.